Hello, and welcome to the Daily Rings of Power podcast, your not-so-daily dose of the latest news, rumours, and speculation about the Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power. The day is Sunday, August 18th, and I'm your host, Harry. I hope you're having a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are in the world. This is a rather unique episode, as it follows the podcast's first ever YouTube livestream, which I hosted on Wednesday 14th, following the release of the final trailer for Season 2. As always, I was joined by my wonderful co-host, Anna, my LSR. I'd like to start by thanking everyone who came to the livestream, whether you stayed for 5 minutes or the whole 3.5 hours. Anna and I were so touched by the support and love from the community, and it's definitely motivated me to do more live streams in future. Now, unlike our previous trailer breakdowns, this one was recorded mere hours after the trailer aired, and so what you're about to hear are Anna and I's initial impressions and analysis as we went through the trailer frame by frame. So if you're listening to it for the first time now, don't expect our usual methodical analysis. Instead, it was more of a free-flowing discussion as we engaged with all the viewers in the live chat. But before we get into that discussion, we will follow our unbreakable tradition and begin with a reading from the Professor's work. Today's reading comes from the Silmarillion, Chapter 19, of Beren and Luthien. On a time of autumn he came in the dusk of evening, and drawing near he saw, as he thought, a light at the window, and coming warily he looked within. There he saw Eilunel, and her face was worn with grief and hunger, and it seemed to him that he heard her voice lamenting that he had forsaken her. But even as he cried aloud, the light was blown out in the wind. Wolves howled, and on his shoulders he felt suddenly the heavy hands of Sauron's hunters. Thus Gorlim was ensnared, and taking him to their camp they tormented him, seeking to learn the hidings of Barahir and all his ways, but nothing would Gorlim tell. Then they promised him that he should be released and restored to Eilunel if he would yield, and being at last worn with pain and yearning for his wife, he faltered. Then, straightway, they brought him into the dreadful presence of Sauron, and Sauron said, "I hear now that thou wouldst barter with me. What is thy price?" And Gorlim answered that he should find Eilunel again, and with her be set free, for he thought Eilunel also had been made captive. Then Sauron smiled, saying, "That is a small price for so great a treachery. So shall it surely be. Say on." Now Gorlim would have drawn back, but daunted by the eyes of Sauron, he told at last all that he would know. Then Sauron laughed, and he mocked Gorlim, and revealed to him that he had only seen a phantom devised by wizardry to entrap him, for Eilunel was dead. "Nonetheless, I will grant thy prayer, and thou shalt go to Eilunel, and be set free of my service." Then he put him cruelly to death. Seeing as this final trailer appears to be revealing the true scale of Sauron's cruelty and malice, particularly towards my favourite elven smith, I thought it only fitting to read a passage where we see the depths of cruelty that the deceiver can truly reach. Now, for those of you who watched live or have since caught up with the VOD on YouTube, do not worry. I don't expect you to listen to us talk again. This episode is simply being published for those who prefer the audio-only format and would like to listen on the go or whilst you're getting on with your busy lives. As a result, I do hope you can forgive the slightly diminished audio quality and the lack of tight editing that I would usually spend many hours on to refine the episode. Hopefully, if you listen to this, you'll now realise why it usually takes me several days to edit the episodes before I release them. Nevertheless, for those who have been waiting for this, I do hope you enjoy our breakdown of the final trailer. So, without further ado, let's dive in. Okay, hopefully, fingers crossed, you guys can see and hear us. Let us know in the chat if you can, because we don't have a clue at the moment.
Yeah, we're a bit blind over here.
Is anyone seeing us? Please, for the love of God, let this work.
Oh, I've just gotten, it's working.
Are people seeing us?
No.
We are so good at YouTube.
Oh, hold on, we just popped up on my YouTube tab.
I see you. Hello. Okay, I think there's a bit of a delay with the chat. That would explain why. Sorry, we are very new to YouTube streaming. So, hello everybody, welcome. The Daily Rings of Power's first ever YouTube live stream with myself, Harry, and with, of course, my lovely co-host Anna. Anna, why don't you tell the I was going to say listeners, but of course viewers, how well I did getting that live stream started.
You know what, we went out of our way over 2 hours ago to test this out, kind of iron things out, make sure there were no technical difficulties, and it still took us about 8 minutes to get it started. But Harry, it's your first YouTube live stream, so we'll go easy on you.
Exactly. It's my first time, guys, and we're not influencers, although we're slowly losing the battle at being called influencers as we go live with a reaction and discussion stream for a trailer, so I don't know what that says about us.
Yeah, I mean, you're the one who kind of brought me over to YouTube, so I'm putting all the blame on you there.
Great. Well, thank you for that. I'm hearing that we might have a bit of an echo. You might just want to turn down your volume a little, because it might be coming back through your earpods. I'll turn mine down a little too as well.
Cool, no problem. Okay, now I've turned it down so much that I can't hear anything.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. We're not very good at this, are we?
We're not very good at this. Judging by the chat, we are live. Some people saying they can't see us yet. Just refresh the stream and hopefully that'll work. So many familiar names in here, so I'm just going to give a shout out to people I recognise. Katie from Prancing Pony, Artenaro, Anne, of course, Philandil Lover, Matt, Tree Herder, Erin. God, so many people in here. Wow, I recognise so many names, but it's lovely to see all this. Okay, people are saying no echo now, so this is great. Yeah. So guys, just to give you an idea of what we've got planned for this evening, I know usually our way of doing it would be Anna and I would take a couple of days, we would watch the trailer far too many times, and then we would inevitably get together for a podcast with loads of notes. We would write about 20 pages of notes, and then we would record for 4 hours, and you would all be bored to tears. So, in the interest of hopefully being slightly more brief, we're going to try and do one of these live streams. This way, we've got the live chat, so we can interact with you guys while we're doing it. The downside of that is obviously Anna and I have probably only watched the trailer a dozen times rather than 100, so our notes are more in our head and we'll just be kind of going scene by scene. And yeah, I guess we'll just be working out as we go along, won't we, Anna?
We will. I do tend to like our kind of knee-jerk reactions, because I think when we prepare for the podcast, people expect us to be kind of like, giving really insightful thoughts and theories. So I'm just going to preface this one by saying, don't expect much intelligence from me. It's going to be knee-jerk reaction to the trailer, which is more emotions-based.
Exactly. More emotions-based. Now, you may know, hopefully you guys can see this, is that we've tried to have a pretty professional live stream. So we've got our names, but we've also, you won't quite be able to tell except for the eagle-eyed of you yet, because it's being covered by our faces, but there is a Region in the background. So hopefully, when I now share my screen so we can get the trailer up ready to go, which should be here. So if we try that and we go full screen, and we'll make sure the quality is good on that. We'll get the captions on, and we'll get the captions nice and big actually, so that everyone can see those. Font size, I don't know how big font. That looks pretty good. Okay.
That looks good.
So we'll get that trailer ready to go. So you guys should now be seeing that. It might go to a black screen occasionally, guys. That's just where I'm tabbing back. So don't worry if it's not appearing for a second. But hopefully you can now all see the Siege of Region in the background, which I think we can all agree, pretty cool stuff, isn't it?
Pretty cool stuff. I mean, I guess before we get into it, if anyone in the chat wants to put their kind of general thoughts, like first reactions to the trailer.
You're right. Anna, do you know what? I have been a terrible host because we start every single one of our trailer episodes the exact same way, and yet somehow we are 10 minutes in and I haven't done it. So Anna, thank you for joining me today, of course, on the Daily Rings of Power livestream /podcast. I don't really need to do a how are you, but Anna, obviously today we got our very last, wow, I'm good at this, very last trailer for season 2 of the Rings of Power, and it was intense, it was emotional, a little bit heartbreaking at times, I think we can agree. But Anna, what were your initial thoughts, reactions, emotions seeing all 2 minutes and 26 seconds of that?
I mean, I think quite a shared view, like within the Rings of Power community, was they've shown us so much in the first 2 trailers. What could they possibly have left to show us? And oh my gosh, I was wrong. There was so much in there, so much depth that they've given to scenes that we've already seen kind of glimpses of. It was just, I've said it before, but every time you think that they can't outdo themselves, they drop something like this and you're just like, how do they keep doing it? And I really like that there's sort of all the trailers feel very dark this season, but there's a very different vibe to each one. There's a slightly different kind of character focus in each one. And I think the main thing that I'll echo, which is the same as my views on the previous trailer, is that once again, Charles Edwards stuck out to me as just, oh my God. It was the first thing that kind of really stuck in my head after watching the trailer, but it was just one of those things where I was kind of sat there silently, just, I can't believe we're getting to see this in less than a month. It's technically only a few weeks now.
Yeah, I mean, two weeks basically until we see it, which doesn't feel like a real thing we should be allowed to say after 700 and however many days it's been since the last season. But I completely agree with what you're saying about how each trailer's had a distinct feel, and I was thinking about this earlier, and you could almost split it up into 3 different types. The first trailer, I mean, it's a teaser, so it is always going to be very much vibes. They didn't show Anatar properly, or we thought they didn't, because it just looked like Sauron kind of during the Siege of Eregion, and we thought, oh, that's just Sauron. And then we got obviously to the second trailer, and the second trailer I think was a real story trailer, wasn't it? It was where we started to go, okay, this is how Sauron's going to arrive in Eregion, this is what Nori and the Stranger are going to be doing in Rune, this is the broad strokes of what's going to be happening in Númenor, this is what Galadriel and Elrond is doing. And then the third trailer, yes, it is, in a way it's even more story focused, but I would almost describe it as a trailer that set the stakes of the season, and we'll be getting on to the dialogue that's used in this trailer, but so much of the dialogue is about saying to the audience, for each of these characters and for Middle-earth as a whole, this is what's at stake over the next 8 episodes.
Yeah, and I like that they're really not holding back on the impact that Sauron /Anatar is going to have this season. We talked about it in the last trailer, and I really think they've carried on this this feel of trusting the audience with this information. They're not trying to hide things from us. They're not trying to have this kind of gotcha moment that they had in season 1. They're very forward with all of this now, and it's so good to see. I mean, I cannot physically wait for Charlie Vickers' performance as Anatar, because the small just glimpses we've had of him, especially in this trailer, he's terrifying, but he just looks incredible.
The funny thing is, I think during the off-season, a lot of us were saying, really excited to see who's going to be playing Anatar, or who's going to be playing, the next version of Sauron. And then when, we first saw that teaser trailer and knew it was going to be Charlie, it was kind of like, oh, okay, I didn't expect that, but let's see what they do with it. And across these 3 trailers, I've gone from, let's see what they do with it, to thank God they kept Charlie as all forms of Sauron, because it's not that I don't think another actor couldn't have brought an interesting dynamic to it or anything like that, but I think what you would lose is having that emotional through line through, and obviously we'll get to the trailer in a second, but that last scene with him and Galadriel, if you had a different actor as sad on in that moment, it just wouldn't carry the same emotional throughput. I just want to, because we obviously asked people for their thoughts, and the chat is moving quickly.
We have everyone neighing in the chat for Beric the horse.
Yeah, well, I'm not a horse girl, but for Beric, I'll be a horse girl for you. Don't clip that. I don't know why I said that. Right, anyway, let's see what people's reactions were to the trailer. Naomi, who, of course, Charles Edward Sufan says, BrimbySobs.mp3 will haunt my dreams tonight. You and me both. Nice to see the Melonheads here as well. Thanks, guys, for joining us. Gut-wrenching, says Joshua. Anna, here's one for you. Fred says, not enough Tom Bombadil.
I completely agree. However, considering the last trailer, that might be a good thing for me, just to keep me calm.
We'll get onto it. D. Hasimovich says too action-focused, which is interesting. We'll have to return to that. Susie says, the trailer was so good, I had physical reactions, so that should tell you all. Well, Susie, knowing you, I just hope you didn't injure yourself. Armenelov says, ruined my life. Superfan K, trailer had me sobbing, wheezing, throwing up, kicking my feet, hyperventilating, all within the first 30 seconds. Matt says that he's glad they keep... Yeah, Matt says that he's glad they're keeping a lot of the Numenor storyline close to the chest, but this trailer was exasperating. Artenaro says, I couldn't even think anything, then I got so emotional, especially about Brimby. Louise says that her boss emailed it to her during that call, which he was on. That tells me the brand is strong. Wow, there's so many of these. Okay, guys, we're not going to be able to get through all of these because there's so many. But I'm seeing a lot more. It's terrific. Glad Charles is getting the screen time. Anne says the Numenor stuff we did get was Chef's Kiss. Claudia says, no reading of the Professor's work. Now listen, while this is a live stream, and I will just be leaving the VOD up after, so if you need to leave or if you miss this live stream, this will be available as VOD. But what I'll also do tomorrow is I'll take the audio files from this, because I'm recording locally, and I'll upload it to the podcast as an audio-only episode. So if any of you want to just listen to it like a regular podcast episode, you can do. And don't worry, there'll be a reading from the Professor's work at the start of that.
There's a really good comment here from Camille, who says it's a great trailer for a mass audience. And I really agree with that. I think that you can tell, because, we've spoke about season 1 being this sort of kind of reintroduction to a very new time in Middle-earth. And this time around, it really feels like they're kind of catering it to a wider audience, kind of less within depth within the Tolkien community and just more kind of general Lord of the Rings and fantasy fans. And I think you can kind of see that through the trailers. You don't really have to know to enjoy.
Yeah. And I think that goes to something as well, like, you will have seen this, and I know we've had similar conversations where everyone in the fandom's going, it's enough content, it's the enough slices TikTok. But what we need to remember is that we're following this stuff obsessively day to day, some of us hour to hour. It's a real problem for a lot of us, and the way we're weaponizing our own brain problems. But for the general audience, what you have to remember is, of the people who are watching the Rings of Power fandom on social media is a very small percentage, and the percentage of that who are like dedicated to following all the promo is minuscule. The actual target audience that Amazon wants with all its promo are either people who watched the first season and convincing them to come back for the second, people who started watching the first season but gave up for whatever reason, found it too slow, didn't enjoy it, so they're trying to entice those viewers back. Or it's people who have never watched the show at all, who maybe don't know anything about Tolkien or the books or the Rings of Power or anything, and it's going to try and get them into the show. So if you're wondering why they're doing all this promo and 3 big trailers and what to us seems quite spoilery, it's because for the mass audience, they have to do that work, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's working for me. There's definitely some things on Twitter that I've been kind of scrolling right past, but that's more leaks than anything that is kind of come out officially. So I think the trailers are giving us just enough. I don't think I would consider them spoilery personally, but it's like we said, when you go back and watch the season 1 trailers, there's so much that they kind of told us. It's like, as you said earlier, they basically gave away the eruption of Mount Doom before episode 1 even aired in season 1.
Yeah, Exactly. Like, I mean, that was the thing, like you say, we were talking about earlier in our group chat, was that if you go back and watch the final trailer, there's a shot of Isildur in the Southlands, clearly, with fiery meteors raining down behind him. And so if you're a book reader, you can put two and two together and say, oh, I know what's happening there. But if your average show watcher, A, they're not even going to know who Isildur is, and B, when they see that image, they're not going to go, well, that must be Mount Doom in the Southlands, because I have looked at the map and realised that the Southlands looks exactly like more, no one's doing any of that. So it's important. Just catching up on the chat. Lovely that Tea with Tolkien was here. Very good friend of mine, and always been so kind to me. But has got to go do the school pickup. So Tea, best of luck with that. Hope there's not too much traffic. And lovely to see more members of the Unhinged in here, like Halbrand's Pouch. I do love you guys, even if I don't really understand what's going on in your brains. So, Anna, is there anything else we want to talk about just in terms of the overall tone, or anything else you want to get off before we start getting into a kind of scene-by-scene discussion of it?
I don't know. I think before we kind of get into like the scene-by-scene discussion, I'm happy. The two things that I've been wanting to see for a while are more Gil-galad, especially in armour, especially with Aeglas. We got that. Mm-hmm. And we got a first proper glimpse or sound of Círdan, so I'm a happy girl, even if we didn't get much Elendil or Numenor in general. So everyone who's been exasperated by the Numenor plot, I'm with you guys. I really am.
Yeah, no, I listen, especially on the Círdan stuff, completely hear you on that. And on Gil-galad, listen, I know he's got a loyal fan base. I know his fan base are particularly excited to see him in action, and you know what, so am I. And it also, we'll get to it when we get to the shot, but I thought, when that behind the scenes video came out a few weeks ago and they showed Gil-galad in armour, half my mind was like, ooh, I'm not sure if the armour looks that good on him. And then I saw him in this clip, I was like, oh no, it looks absolutely fine. He looks great.
Mm-hmm. See, you should never doubt a High King, Harry.
I know. It was my first mistake. Right, well, let us get into the trailer. So again, guys, this is our first time doing a live stream, so if I mess up at any point, just bear with me. So trailer opens exact same way we've been used to across all of these, and the first shot we get and the first dialogue is King Durin saying to his son, war is coming to Middle-earth. Now, I know we're literally 3 seconds in and I'm already pausing at it, but I was a little bit surprised that A, these were the first characters we saw, and B, that I guess that it's the dwarves setting the tone of war is coming to Middle-earth. Do you know what I mean? Like, it feels like a left field choice almost.
Yeah, I mean, the previous trailers, whilst the dwarves have been kind of heavy in content, they've been very much framed around Sauron and Galadriel. So to open it with King Durin especially, I was a little bit like, oh, okay, I didn't think that he would get the first quote and the first shot. It's a bold choice, but I like that they're letting us know that they are going to have a big role. I mean, I think that we've theorized like Prince Durin's hand in the big battle at the end, things like this, but it's a very interesting choice, considering the last trailer opened up with a shot of Sauron still in his Halbrand form, kind of just behind this gate. So it's a very different vibe just straight off the bat.
Yeah, and I think it goes to that thing of like, this trailer was not going to waste any time with like, for you viewers who remember the fact that Halbrand left Eregion, here's him coming back, because you know what that means. Instead it was like, no, we've been talking in articles and interviews and everything for months about how dark this trailer is going to be, so our opening line is just going to be, war is coming to Middle-earth, and you're going to know exactly what that means. I think the other thing about it is, I'm not going to get into book spoilers, obviously. We're going to try not to do that too much in this stream. Actually, just going to check that the stream is still working, because... No, okay, I think it's working. All right, just checking. But I think... What do I think? I think the idea of having the dwarves say that is obviously very important for where the end of the season will go and what might happen during the big 2-episode battle. I see someone saying, it's Anne saying, you need to unmute the video. I think we'll get copyright claimed if we play the video with sound. I'm not sure. We might have to be a bit careful with that. That's why I've got the subtitles on. Hopefully the subtitles are showing up for you guys. But yeah. So I think it's a strong opening. I think the chat's frozen. Is the chat frozen for you, by the way?
The last thing I've got is from Anne, so unless people just don't have anything to add.
It's possible people just don't have anything to add, which, if that's the case, that's fine. But I'm going to keep checking. Sorry, guys. Again, this
just got another one from
Anne's
Anne,
message.
So.
Okay. Looks like it's fine. All right. So, I think, we will get copyrighted. Now, Beric's asking, is Doran wearing the ring when he says this? Let's see if there's... because I can scroll through frame by frame. I don't think we see anything of him below the beard. Yeah, we go straight into that next shot of the orcs running towards Eregion. So I think the interesting thing, though, is it does look like, if you remember from the Comic-Con trailer, that scene where Prince Doran's telling him to take off the ring and then he bats him away. Yes. He's definitely wearing the ring in that one, so I wonder whether this is from the same scene.
Yeah, I mean, there's a later one where I think you can see him kind of twisting the ring round in his hands, but it's not very obvious in this.
No. Okay, it's all right. People are just being quiet. That's fine. That's fine. Don't worry, guys. We're just not used to these live chats, so we're always a bit self-conscious that they're going to be breaking. Okay, so not much needs to be said on that, except obviously setting the tone. We then get into our kind of first shot from the Siege of Eregion, and what's interesting about this is the first new shot, and then it's going to take us right into a shot we've seen before. So we get these shots from behind into the shot of all the orcs massing across. Now the thing, and I'm going to be doing an episode this Sunday, which should hopefully release next Monday, on the Siege of Eregion with our good friend Sarah Westvick, talking all about the siege. But the thing that I would ask you guys to note is, right, you can go and look at pictures of Eregion from last season. There's even some pictures of it later that you'll see. What is the big thing missing from the right-hand side of this picture that might stop an army of orcs running across? And it's, of course, a river, which is no longer there. So my big question, Anna, is, I mean, I'm going to speculate further on this with Sarah, but I just wonder if you have any thoughts. How are the orcs going to dam a river exactly that big?
I don't know. I mean, it's gonna take a while, so you can assume that this is like quite a way into the siege itself. But there is a shot later in this that I don't think it is related, but there's the kind of a shot of what looks to be like a large-ish wave. And my first thought was that had something to do with the river being kind of dammed or drained or whatever, but it probably isn't. And this is where my theorizing goes downhill because I have absolutely no idea.
Yeah, so I think the way you guys should be thinking about it, and like I said, there'll be probably a 3-hour episode on this next week, so I'm not going to go over it. But think about it this way, and I'll just go forward to one of the next shots just to say what I'm talking about. So here in this shot, you can see all the catapults and trebuchets on the riverbank, and you'll notice that on the right-hand side of the screen, that the bridge which would cross the river to the gatehouse is broken. And then we get to this next shot, which is from the night time, of the catapults firing and launching, and then we get another shot as I pull through onto elven soldiers on the walls, and in the middle ground, if you look in between where this front wall or from where this exterior wall is to where the catapults are in the background, you can see that there's still reflections on the water there. So I think what we're probably looking at here, and this doesn't obviously take a genius, is that we're going to have Adar's forces arrive. Whether they break the bridge, or I imagine more likely the elves purposely sabotage the bridge so that it can't be crossed. And then obviously, like any siege, you're going to have a bombardment, but at a certain point, Adar is going to want to get his forces across, and probably not wanting to try and attempt some kind of makeshift crossing on boats and rafts. What they're going to end up doing is say, okay, well, if we can't do this, let's do a Saruman in the Fellowship of the Ring and just dam the thing. You know, let's act like beavers and just dam the river. So I assume it's going to happen in that order.
Yeah, so I'm just reading the chat. My audio seems to be a bit quiet. I don't have as professional a setup as Harry, so I've moved the mic a little bit closer, so let me know if you guys can hear me anymore.
What I'll do is I'll try and move away. I'll try and move away from the mic a little bit because I'm getting quite close to mine, so I'm probably just a bit loud for people as well.
Yeah, the only other thing I want to add on to that is Lavender makes a really good comment, and they say, Damrod sounds like a really good way to dam a river. And I agree. Maybe he just lies down and everyone kind of just uses him as a bridge.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, you've been calling him your big boy, so maybe we should call him your big booty boy, and actually he just sits in the river, and it is just his, you know, his thickness with 3 Cs, which enables him to dam the flow. Did I take the joke too far? I don't know.
I think you did, and I just want everyone to know for the record that was all Harry. That was not me.
No, you have, for a good week now, been calling him your big boy or big baby boy. I can't remember which one it is exactly, so don't try and change the record now.
Susie says that I'm just not as loud as you in general, and I do tend to agree.
All
but
right,
let's
okay,
move on.
You know, as you said to me, maybe I'm just more professional. Just catching up on some of the comments we've got here. Anne says, the Orcs were very good at digging trenches last season. I'm sure they know how to build a dam. I mean, that's true technically, if you think about it. One of the nice, I guess, parallels or inversions from Season 1 is, in order to create their homeland, they released the dam, you know, in the Southlands, which then let the water flow to Mount Doom. And this time, they're going to be, putting the dam in place in order to destroy someone else's homelands. So maybe that's the kind of thematic idea of it. Just checking up on other comments. Louise has to leave, but has to go. Thought I'd get a bit more by 8 p.m. Listen, we thought we'd probably be further than 8 seconds into the trailer, but for those of you who've listened to the podcast, you know this is what we do. Superfan K says, was the Fall of Region confirmed to be 2 episodes or 3? So the first thing we ever got told about the battle is that it's going to be a 2-episode battle, but I think what you can't remove from that is that some of the kind of building action to that and the falling action from it may go across 3 episodes. So we may see the siege actually start in episode 6, and while the battle proper might conclude by the end of 7, you're going to see the falling action from that at the end of episode 8. Shall I move on so that people can stop complaining that we're going too slowly?
Yeah, one last thing is that Beric says orcs are underrated engineers in Middle-earth. I agree, and I would like to see that explored in the kind of Adar plot. Just some kind of, like a little bit of a job structure with the orcs, you know, what they do day to day. If they do dam the river, I'd like to see kind of a leader, like a little workforce. I think that would be really cute.
I mean, it is a bit like, you know how everyone memes about that scene in, is it the Fellowship of the
Middle
Ring,
Management
or
Orc.
the Two Towers? Exactly, union boss orc who's like, we don't have the labour and you'll make us work overtime and we don't have the materials. So maybe though, I mean, we have been told that we are getting orcs this season with full character arcs, and there's some other things I won't go into which I think in articles have been quite spoilery, but I think we're actually going to see the personal lives of orcs, which I guess is just building upon that theme that I know you loved as well as I did last year, where it gave more depth to the orcs through Adar and through his children, right?
Yeah, and I think the last thing I want to say on this before we move on, because again we're 8 seconds in, is I love that shot of the kind of flipped perspective of it coming from behind the elves in Region. Just that kind of sense of foreboding it gives you. I feel like the build up to the battle is going to be really good, because one of my favourite parts of the Lord of the Rings trilogy is the build up to Helm's Deep, just kind of the fear and the anticipation. So I feel like we're going to get something quite akin to that here.
And I think what's interesting in this shot as well, and I won't make us go over every frame, but what's interesting here is that what we're seeing in this shot is some of these projectiles landing. But we're also seeing orcs and elves battling in front of the walls, and we can discuss why that is later because we're going to get some other shots that are relevant. But I think it's interesting that what we're clearly going to see, and we saw it in I think the promo clip for Damrod, where Adar ignores the orc who's telling him that Damrod is going to kill their own kind, and so clearly he's not just going to be unfazed by having Damrod kill his own kind. He's still going to be, sending in catapults and projectiles even while his forces are in front of the walls fighting. So I think it's going to show a new ruthless side of Adar. And before we finish with these battle scenes, Anna, is there anything you want to say about Elrond here looking very beleaguered and under threat?
I think you know that what I want to talk about is Elrond being covered in blood and mud with flames behind him. But listen, I don't think I can say anything that hasn't been said on Twitter about this. He just looks great, and I'm so excited to see him in battle, just kind of step into this role. And Robert Aramayo, he's just the best.
I think this is the most feral he's looked as well. Like, this shot in particular, he just looks like absolutely at his wit's end, and obviously we don't know how long he's going to be fighting for, but he genuinely, going from season 1 Elrond sitting under a tree writing Gil-galad's speech and being like, oh, I hoped you wouldn't find me, and to now here just looking like he's been through 12 days of hell. Yeah.
I'd like to think that his inner monologue here is because we've got in the last trailer some shots of him saying, don't take the rings, this is a bad idea. So I like to think that his inner monologue is just I knew that this was going to happen. What did I say? And here we are. I know.
It really is going to be the season of Gil-galad and Elrond saying, I told you so, I did in fact tell you so. Just catch up with the comments. Katie says, waiting for when Mike Aramayo watches this. I don't think Mike watches YouTube live stream. He just seems to have Google alerts turned on for every time someone tweets about him, because it's amazing how quickly he will find your tweet. But we've talked about this before. It is really lovely how he supports Rob, so it's very nice. Oh, and Aru from Twitter's joined us. Hi, Aru.
Hi, Aru.
Armenelos says, so anyways, I started barking, so I guess that's that's one way of talking about it.
A really nice comment from Superfan K, who says, you guys are doing great, take your time. Anybody who knows your pod knows this is just how long you do it for. And it is. We're just a little bit obsessive.
Yeah, we don't really do brevity, we don't do concise, we don't do to the point. Listen, there will be lots of Tolkien influencers and content creators who can deliver you a 20-minute, very intelligent breakdown of the video. You're just going to get a couple of hours of our uncensored, unedited thoughts. And unlike usually, I would be able to edit all our digressions out, so you're stuck with us seeing as we're doing this live stream. Anyway, let us continue. So we have Elrond here, as we said, looking feral and people going feral for him. And then we get to Galadriel. This is obviously a shot we've seen before of her with her and Elrond's company. Some of the new characters like Rhiann, played by Selena Lowe, and Camnir, played by Callum Lynch. And as we progress through this, Galadriel says, this is the work of Sauron, and if on cue, or as if on cue, we get to this. I'm going to have to go through this frame by frame, but we first get this shot of Sauron in his Halbrand form. And Anna, how damn creepy does he look in this shot? It's genuinely disturbing me every time. What is going on with his eyes? It's horrifying.
Yeah, I was going to say there's kind of a few times in this trailer where we get a shot of him, and whether it's in Halbrand form or Anatar or Sauron, and he just looks kind of vacant and a bit feral behind the eyes, and I think that it just goes to kind of show that Charlie Vickers has really nailed that physical change within him, because he looks visually exactly the same as he did in season 1, but from just this shot alone you can tell that you're looking at a completely different character. It's absolutely insane.
Well, it's funny because we got this shot in the last trailer, but they kind of faded it out as he was turning, and I think this is obviously the shot continued. And there's almost something like hollowed out about him, right? Like the Halbrand face and the Halbrand persona is pulled tight over this, almost skeleton of a figure, and inside the real Sauron is just yearning to break out. It's like he can't even really hold on to this form anymore.
And listen, him not holding on to Halbrand is a win for me, so this is great.
Listen, everyone in the chat and everyone who's listening knows your feelings on Halbrand. There's no need to get your pitchfork out for him every time he shows up. Just going back to a couple of the comments in the chat. Aru says, "Anna, you look amazing," that's very lovely, isn't it? Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I just ask it?
I don't like the way you delivered that, Harry.
Well, no, I was just going to say, Aru says, "Anna, you look amazing." What am I, what am I, just baggage? Am I set dressing? Not particularly nice to look at, set dressing?
I think it's just established that you look amazing all the time, Harry. This is, rare for me, so, we have to appreciate it.
Well, you see, the thing is, I did turn off my overhead lights because I thought otherwise the shining light off my head would blind people. So people they're like, where is that angelic halo of light gone? And I just don't recognize. Harry kind of looks like he's in the shadows. Where is his natural glow? So anyway, Harry, listen, no hard feelings. It's fine. Anna does look amazing, unfortunately. Just going through the other comments. Jimmy says, "You don't edit digressions out, hun." Believe me, Anna, back me up here. We do edit digressions out of the pod, right?
Listen, one of our probably longest podcast episodes, Harry actually sent me the blooper from it the other day. It was 7 minutes long. 7-minute long blooper because Harry pronounced a word wrong and we couldn't kind of gather ourselves afterwards. And let me just say that if this was a podcast episode, Harry would have absolutely edited out that Damrod joke from before. He makes jokes like that all the time. You just never see them.
I would have. So it's so true. I protect my own reputation better than I protect Anna's. And listen, guys, you don't need to tell me I'm handsome. It's fine. I know it already. I wasn't fishing for compliments, God. Anyway, we'll carry on as we are. So yeah, moving through this. Obviously, we get the shot of Halbrand. Again, we're a little bit confused as we were on last episode about how we got the shot of Halbrand, what looked like going into Eregion during the day, and now he's here at night. But I think it was Beric actually in the chat who said to me after we released our episode that maybe that shot of Halbrand going through the gate is actually part of the flashback where we'll see him leaving Eregion after his showdown with Galadriel. So that may be why. Otherwise, he's just hanging about Eregion during the day. And then we get this flash of lightning, this shot of him in his Anatar/Sauron form. I mean, I think we do have to, while he's got this blonde hair look, just for ease of use, we're just going to call it his Anatar form. We've got this look. He's looking sad. Why is he? He's got tears in his eyes, Anna. Why does he look so sad? What's gone wrong
Harry,
in his life?
it's hard being the biggest bad in the world. It takes a toll.
Yeah.
Let him be a little bit depressed, okay?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I like to think this is after he's done what he's going to do to Celebrimbor, and actually, he suddenly realizes he has done this horrible thing to the nicest elf you could ever possibly meet, and he's going to feel some guilt. And frankly, he deserves to feel all the guilt.
He does. That just thinks of a really good comment we just got. Jimmy Mack says, maybe Celebrimbor ties Anatar's little bow in his hair every morning.
Oh, listen, let me tell you, that is my new head. Jimmy, thank you for that. I will now accept no other explanation, because listen, when he arrives in the forge, when we first get that shot, he's just got his hair down, no bow. By the end of the season, he's got a bow. When does he start tying the bow? And who's he tying the bow for? Let's be honest. He's not tying it for anyone. Listen, he's spending his time with one dude.
He's the Lord of Gifts. He's just wrapping himself into a nice little gift.
Yes, although it is a bit of a trick gift in this case. So we see him looking very, very sad. Like I said, I do wonder whether this is him post Battle of Eregion. Obviously, we're going to get a shot of him later with Galadriel. Perhaps he's trying to manipulate her by looking all sad, big puppy dog eyes. Something tells me that's not going to work. Then we get another flash Oh, am I going the right way? Yeah, we get a flashback to Halbrand again, which, don't know why, but we basically get the same shot again, flashed of him there. Then we get this shot of him walking through the flames, which I absolutely love because you can see that beautiful golden coronet he has around his head. So this is obviously his entrance. And then we get this scene of his Halbrand form. Oh, and if we carry on, because this just obviously flashes by very quickly, we'll get to it. He opens his eyes. Now, Anna, where do you think is this from the prologue flashing back to when he first became Halbrand? Is this post whatever happens with Galadriel? Like, what is this?
I mean, I can't see anywhere that they would fit this in if not the prologue. I think they've been quite clear that we're going to see how he comes to his Halbrand form. We've seen that little clip of what looks to be him kind of reforging his body out of this black goo. So you'd like to think that this is the kind of culmination of that. Yeah, that's where I think it's going to be.
My thought process is this might be the first time he assumes the Halbrand form, right? So we don't know exactly how he's going to do that, whether he's going to come across the real Halbrand, kill him, and then, adopt his form, or whether from this black goo we saw in the very first trailer, he's just going to manifest into this form. I'm personally more on he kills the real Halbrand. I don't think it's a case of him how can I put it? It's not him possessing a dead body, it's him seeing someone else's form and then, almost cloning himself to look like that is the best way I can put it. Obviously, these are all kind of rough terms that don't really make sense. But so I think that's probably where it fits in the prologue.
It does make me quite, it's quite funny. And I think it's quite a big compliment to Charlie Vickers that, we think there's going to be a different actor who plays kind of original form Sauron in the prologue. So I like the fact that the thing is that he takes over Halbrand's body and he likes his face so much that he sheds the rest of it, but he just keeps his face as Anatar. He's like, yeah, I like this one.
There he goes, you know what, a bit done with the bob, but I would like some long blonde hair, and maybe the beard's a bit itchy, trying to maintain a nice jawline. How about I just shave it off, get some cleaner clothes, get myself all freshened up, and that'll be what, we have heard in interviews that his Anatar form is specifically designed for Celebrimbor, so clearly he's realised Celebrimbor, not a fan of the scruff. Anything else we want to cover from the comments? Halbrand's pouch about that shot of Anatar says he's sad because he has to commit war crimes, brackets again. Basically the Second Age story of Sauron in a nutshell. Beric, in quotation marks, if only they all listened to me, I wouldn't have had to destroy them. I mean, he is that sort of megalomaniac. Anything else we want to see from any other comments you want to pick up on, or are we good to carry on?
I like Anne's take that he's anamorphing into Halbrand, and I would absolutely love it if they kind of released a picture of just that happening. I don't know if you saw the kind of Animorph books, but it's like kind of a person on one side and they just slowly morph into like a tiny little animal. It's hilarious.
What is an Animorph?
Harry, we don't have time to get into that right now. We're 15 seconds in.
I haven't seen Frozen, I haven't seen Ratatouille, and I don't know what an Animorph is. So let's carry on with the trailer.
You haven't seen Ratatouille?
Do you not remember our Numenor digression? Numenor? Do you not remember how that ended?
Harry.
Anyway, no one's going to know what we're talking about, so let's just move on. So anyway, after this shot of him opening his eyes, we go straight into Anatar walking through what I think we can pretty surmise is Khazad-dûm, because as we pan out, we can see just over his right shoulder, we can see King Durin on his throne, and you can kind of see, even though it's blurry, those shots we've talked about in previous trailers, all that gold piled up, all that treasure piled up on either side of it. So this is clearly post having handed out the ring. And I think the thing that's interesting about this is, if you remember in one of our previous episodes, I think we got a listener question where someone said, do we think Sauron is going to physically travel to Khazad-dûm to give the rings, or is Celebrimbor just going to go and Anatar is going to stay behind and carry on manipulating things in Eregion? I think this is a pretty clear sign that we are actually going to see Sauron doing evil stuff in Khazad-dûm, so I'm very curious to see what that looks like.
I do like now that this is our kind of second full-length clip of him just walking through this almost destruction and just smiling. You know, he's having a great time, just messing everyone's lives up.
Well, that's the thing. He looks kind of mad, but if he's... So my only other theory about this is, right, if we remember in the books what's said about the 7 dwarven rings, is that obviously Sauron gave all these rings out in the hope that he could dominate and control peoples. And with the 9 men, that worked, but with the dwarves, it was said that they were too hardy, too tough of, and fierce of spirit to be controlled and dominated. Yes, it made their greed and their lust for treasure and that more insular-looking inward element stronger in them, but Sauron wasn't able to dominate them in the way he was with the 9 men. So I wonder if this is, after he's given them the 7 rings, he goes back to Khazad-dûm to, see how his plan is working, and while King Durin is being greedy and, inward-looking and prideful, he is not listening to anything that Anatar says, and I wonder if that's why he's looking, so kind of angry in this shot.
I do like that he just wears his emotions on his face. He's Sauron the Deceiver, but you look at him and you know exactly what he's thinking.
Exactly. Master of deception, but if he's in a huff, then you will know about it, basically.
Yeah.
So we get this shot, this carries on, and then the next thing we get is a continuation, and, I'm just going to play this through for a second, then I'll pause and go through it frame by frame. So we have him walking away, dodges the sword, takes the sword, and kills the guard. Now this is obviously a continuation of that very first trailer where we saw Sauron surrounded by all these guards in the ruined forge, and all the guards start to turn each other. And, this is a little bit of a spoiler, but they've put it in the trailer, but if you look on the ground behind him, those are very clearly the guards we saw standing up and turning, now very much dead on the floor.
You know what this reminded me of, though, and this might just be me kind of wanting to draw connections where there are none, but the kind of choreography and the way he dodges the blade really reminds me of the scene of Galadriel fighting the kind of sea god in Númenor. And we know that Halbrand was watching that scene, he was kind of watching her fight, and that's what that dodging of the sword really reminded me of.
Yeah, let's play that through. So he turns to the side, dodges it just like Galadriel does. I mean, look at that poor elf's face. I mean, he is just looking like, what have I got myself into here? I mean, never has a face looked so like, today I effed up. Why did I get to choose duty with Celebrimbor today? So he goes past him, Anatar just looking absolutely disdainful. And then I think he pauses mid-strike, looks at Celebrimbor, takes the sword off him, and oh my god, yeah, that is insane. A bad end for that guy.
I mean,
bad end for that guy.
They said that this season was going to be more brutal, and if they're showing stuff like that in the trailer, then I don't even want to think about the things we're going to see in the show itself. Like, it's insane.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's too much more we need to add to it, but I love that point you made about him copying Galadriel's fighting style. It's like there's a respect that he has for her prowess, even though she's rejected his offer to rule by his side. And I think the other thing we can say about this shot is just as you go through it, what you'll see as we move through it. Let me. Where did I get to that shot? I think I've lost the shot. Here we are. You can see Celebrimbor standing in the background, once again holding what looks like a damaged hand. Now, this is clearly what we can see now. This is inside the Great Forge. So clearly whatever's happening during the siege, Sauron has gone into the Great Forge to presumably find the 9 rings for men, and he can't find them, and Celebrimbor has basically tried to ambush him and kill him, and obviously that is going to go terrifically well. Then we move into this shot, which is a really cool shot, which is this lone rider going through the desert canyon, and in the distance, I think what's fascinating, so this is all just natural rocky outcropping, and then in the distance, these 3 structures here in the background, in the center of the background, look like they're man-made structures. So I wonder from those shots we've seen in other trailers, whether those are the temples we've seen the mystics inside or something like that. But it's very interesting that clearly I mean, again, we've had conversations before about how we feel about the way the Rune plotline is being promoted, but there's clearly a very specific aesthetic they're going for, and it is that, admittedly, an idea based in Tolkien, this idea of Rune being a place where magic cults sprang up and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that kind of threw me about this was that I second-guessed. I saw the desert, and I was like, okay, this is Rune, but then we don't get another Rune shot for quite a while, so I was like, kind of gaslighting myself, thinking, oh no, it has to be somewhere else because they've put it in this section of the trailer, but just seems like a random shot choice. But yeah, it's very vast, and I think it's, as you said, we've not seen too much of the Rune plotline, but we've got a lot of these really nice kind of epic landscape shots. As you said, they filmed on location, and you did a lot of deep diving into the rock formation, so that's probably how you recognise.
Listen, Anna, I can tell. Do you want to know one thing that I know from my rock obsession from last episode? These are all CGI rocks. None of these are real from Tenerife, because A, they're the wrong color, they're the wrong shape. I mean, obviously this is very clearly a complete digital background anyway. But yeah, I don't think this shot was filmed on location. This to me looks like... Oh, we almost went on to Gil-galad. This to me looks like an almost 100% digital shot. I mean, the rider might be a physical element that they've composited in, but everything else looks digital to me. Anyway, we'll return to Rune later, like you said, so I can probably do a bit of complaining about it. Next up, we get Gil-galad, our first shot of Gil-galad in the trailer, wearing a very lovely gold robe, and he says, "Our armies cannot defeat him. Once the deceiver obtains a being's trust, he gains the ability to sculpt their very thoughts." I mean, Anna, I know he's one of your favourites. How are we feeling about... how are we feeling about this lovely costume and B, his dialogue?
I know they finally gave him something else to wear. I mean, I do wish it was a different colour, but listen, he rocks gold and he knows it, so I don't blame him. I mean, I think I've always loved everything about his character design. From the first kind of promo shots we got of him in season 1, I was just like, oh my god, Benjamin Walker was born to play Gil-galad. And just, there's not much you can say about this shot except he just looks great, and he's just so elven. Like, look at his ears and look at his little headpiece.
He does have big ears, doesn't he? They're big old, kind of wind turbines on the side of his head.
Harry.
Sorry.
They're cute,
anyway.
Okay.
But yeah, no, sure, they're very cute. What I like about the robes as well is it almost looks they've got kind of like clam designs on them. Like, if you look, those ridges almost look like, the kind of outside of a clam. And so I wonder again whether this is tying Gil-galad to Círdan, tying him to the sea, all these things that, I know I'm bringing it back to Círdan for no reason, but I'm just saying that what I will say about him getting a new outfit, though, is I feel like you and I both had the same complaint about season 1, which was like, can Gil-galad wear more than one outfit in a season, please? And I think this season he's getting plenty of outfits, so it's kind of good to see that already in this trailer we've got another one.
We've had 3 already, including his armor, and he just, these... I didn't even notice the kind of shell detailing, and I know that it's not what it is, but they almost look like really cozy pajamas to me, and I like the idea that maybe he's just been woken up with some really bad news and he's just in his pajamas. He's like, we cannot go to war right now, I've just woken up.
Yeah. No, I mean, it does look very comfortable, I have to say. I mean, all his costumes looked comfortable in season 1 because they were basically like giant bathrobes and pajamas made out of silk, and you just think, well, actually, I would wander around the house in those. That would be quite nice. One thing I think is very interesting about the dialogue, though, is that he says, our armies cannot defeat him. That's the first line. And do you know what this immediately made me think of was Galadriel and Adar's conversation in season 1, when Adar's talking about how he, killed Sauron in inverted commas and split him open. He says something that you and all your armies could not do. And so what I like about this, A, it's a nice callback to season 1, but B, it's a nice way of showing that Gil-galad was someone who lived through the horrors of the First Age. We have to remember that Gil-galad, is taken in by Círdan as a child because basically, whoever his parents are, depending on which version you read, they're gone. And Círdan, kind of adopts him as a foster son. And Gil-galad, yes, he sees the end of the First Age where the host of the Valar and all the elves from Valinor come and defeat Morgoth. But that is the only way they were able to defeat Morgoth and all the armies of evil at the end of the First Age. So I think what's interesting, it's Gil-galad almost setting up this idea for the audience who may have not read the books, that while the elves are these superhuman warriors and they're very cool, that doesn't mean they can just go and win every battle no matter what.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that we're getting this side to Gil-galad. I mean, one of the things we said was that we wanted a bit of a deeper dive into his character this season. And I think it was described as him being kind of a peacetime king who's now suddenly having to prepare for war. And, as we said, you're not going to be able to do that with unwavering confidence. So this is kind of his time to have his foundation shook a little bit. And, who knows, we might see Círdan be the one to kind of guide him and instill that confidence back within him. I know that I would love to see that. And just looking here at the chat, Superfan K says that Benjamin had one of the more underrated performances of season 1, and I completely agree. So I'm very excited to see what he does this season.
No, I think we both agreed that he did really well with the limited amount of material he had in season 1. But for season 2, I know on previous episodes we've talked about wanting to see a softer side of him, wanting to see kind of different elements to him. I've just realised we're at an hour in and we're only 20 seconds into the trailer, so we really do need to get a move on, actually, because this is bad even for our standards.
Yes.
Yeah, so we will move on. Obviously that clip continues and we then get into, we get this lovely shot of Elrond. Let's just say very beautiful curls, lovely curls.
Gorgeous. And someone commented before, are we going to see Elrond's hair kind of grow over the seasons? And I think we're seeing the beginnings of it, and he looks wonderful.
Again, I think that goes back to something we've discussed on previous episodes. There's going to be a bit of a time skip across these different episodes. So we're seeing our armies cannot defeat him. We go forward into, a nice shot of the Siege of Eregion, the orcs raising the ladders. I mean, this looks... We don't need to analyse it much except to say this is absolutely... this is Pelennor Field's Helm's Deep on steroids in some way in terms of the practical sets they've got.
Yeah, I mean, this was one of the shots where when I watched it, because it goes past quite quickly, I had to rewind because I was like, I know that I didn't just see a siege ladder going up. And then I rewound it and I was like, we did just see that. And again, not to kind of compare it to the Jackson films, but the immediate comparison there was the Helm's Deep, the siege ladders going up, just, oh my god, epic.
It's great. It's so good. So then we go on from that. We get the shot we've had before of Sauron wandering through Eregion, looking very pleased. Well, not pleased with himself. He just looks nonplussed about the fact he's got a city burning around him. And that's when we get this line from Gil-galad where he says, once the deceiver obtains a being's trust, he gains the ability to sculpt their very thoughts. So we carry on through this. We see Gil-galad placing Vilya on his finger, his ring of power, obviously, and we see Elrond in the background. We can tell by his grey robes that he's there in the background, and we see the shot of Galadriel looking up to the trees, and then the great tree of Lindon being healed by the light that we assume the trees. And then we see that the person he's having this conversation with, which I think is most interesting, is that he's having this conversation with Galadriel. So when he's talking about the deceiver obtaining a being's trust, he gains their ability to sculpt their very thoughts. So my question to you, Anna, is, given that that's basically what happened to Galadriel, where Halbrand gained her trust, manipulated, deceived her, and seemed to almost, try to get inside her head and drive her in certain directions, what I can't tell here is this Gil-galad talking about the danger Celebrimbor was in? Or what I think would be really interesting is Galadriel, I think, is going into the season feeling like she's going to be in a lot of trouble. what would be really interesting is if Gil-galad showed some empathy and said, this is the great deceiver, you are not you are not perfect, even you could not have foreseen everything. So I don't know whether you have any thoughts on that, but I just thought it was interesting to find that line was being said to Galadriel.
I mean, we're going to have to see all three ring bearers kind of come to terms with their decision to take a ring. And, the elven rings, they're pretty much safe in terms of the fact that it was Celebrimbor who made them. But they're still taking these kind of rings of power, and they have something to do with Sauron. Kind of, he was the one who thought of their creation in the first place, and manipulated Celebrimbor into doing them that way. So I think that if there is empathy involved there, it will also be not selfish, but kind of catered to making himself feel better about the decision as well, because, we think it's obviously going to be very driven by bringing the life back to Lindon, but he is taking a ring himself, so whether that will affect how he treats and views Galadriel I think will be quite interesting.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think, at the moment, it's very much up to interpretation. I think the other interesting thing you can tell here is he's once again wearing a different outfit, so you can see on his right shoulder that it's a different pattern, and then on the left he's got this kind of beautiful black cloak with then these golden, almost metallic leaves. It's like an extension of his crown, which I really love, but it's clearly a different outfit, and so again this might go to the idea of there being time skips and being the first few episodes of the season taking place over a prolonged period of time. Just in the comments, Susie says, I think it's very interesting considering what the next shot in the trailer is, and obviously we'll get onto that in a second. Then Susie's got another comment about that, so we'll move on to that. Anne says, I also feel like this is Gil-galad almost warning Galadriel about the grip Sauron has on her now, like he's telling her so she's aware he might try and mess with her some more. That's really interesting. I like that, as if the threat hasn't gone away. And Beric says that he's going to be writing a thread on this, so I guess we can all look forward to Beric's thoughts on that. But as Susie said, let's move on to this next shot. So he says about gaining the ability to sculpt their very thoughts. Then we get this shot that we'd seen a little bit of in the first teaser, where Galadriel is in what looks like Lindon's forest with Celebrimbor. The roots ensnare him. And as these roots ensnare him, we switch to this shot of everything in red. As I joked on Twitter, it's not Nightmare on Elm Street, it's Nightmare on Elf Street. And Celebrimbor gets pulled against this tree by the vines, and then it almost looks like they explode out of his chest, which is, that's pretty graphic and horrifying. I mean, I think we both agree. I think we both agree, Anna, that this is obviously a dream sequence, but it's still pretty horrifying for Galadriel to be having to witness this.
Yeah, and I mean, no huge spoilers, but it's very on the nose foreshadowing, just this shot right here, which is just crazy. And I like that It's the kind of roots coming out of the ground that is what ensnares Celebrimbor, because he has his roots in Galadriel now, and maybe that's, as Anne and Susie said, is what Gil-galad is trying to warn her about. I mean, we got the kind of voiceover in the last trailer where she says to Elrond, you think that this is deceiving me, but I think that it's guiding me. And it's whether maybe Elrond or Gil-galad think that she is still being guided by those thoughts that Sauron planted into her mind, and not her own will to say.
Yeah, exactly. I think, so Susie said in the chat, as you mentioned, personally I think Galadriel gets a vision of Sauron manipulating Celebrimbor, and she goes to tell Gil-galad, and then this conversation happens, maybe. So that's interesting, the idea of these two shots actually all kind of being reversed. But I think, like you said, that without getting into spoilers, the fact that his body is pierced with these roots feels a little bit like, okay, we see what you're going. I mean, this is a very horrific vision, and I wonder whether this is going to be part of the idea that Galadriel has some uncertainty about whether her ring is free from the influence of Sauron, even though she says in the last trailer she believes it's guiding her. This almost feels like whether it's to do with the ring or not, this to her is surely going to feel like her being manipulated.
Yeah, and I think Aru makes a really good point in the chat. They say, I think this is Celebrimbor trying to reach out to Galadriel, but then Sauron stops him, which I think is a great theory, because one of the things we discussed is that Sauron is going to have to cut Celebrimbor off and Eregion off from the rest of the elves. And listen, I don't know how this would work, how he would kind of get into Galadriel's head like this, but I like the idea that it's some sort of kind of desperate plea, because I can't imagine why Sauron would want to let Galadriel know that Celebrimbor is in danger if this is something that he's putting into Galadriel's head himself. You'd want to think that he would keep that kind of information away from the rest of the elves.
Exactly, and as you said, it's kind of tied into that idea of Celebrimbor being isolated alone. We talked about the shot in the last trailer with the bridge being destroyed. Is this all prior to Galadriel and Elrond heading out on their company's mission, because they're going to realise that Celebrimbor is in danger? And this is the kind of instigating, whether it's a vision Galadriel has, obviously we know she does have, to a certain extent, a real gift of foresight and wisdom and ability to see things in Middle-earth. So that would be very interesting. Katie says, the redness of the scene and the vines reminds me distinctly of the scene with Max and Vecna in Stranger Things. Now that's really interesting, because I did actually want to... I've been having some of these thoughts over the last couple of weeks, not about Sauron, but actually about another character and their relation to Stranger Things. So I'll come back to that later. But I do really like that comparison with season 4 of Stranger Things. I can see people talking in the chat about, I think it's Katie again, talking about whether it's a Sunway and the idea of the elves being able to telepathically communicate. I don't think the show really wants to get into that. I've always kind of hated, maybe this is just me, but I've always hated that part of Tolkien where it's like, oh yeah, on top of everything else, the elves can telepathically communicate. It's like, all right, Tolkien, I think they've got enough. They're already immortal, they're already super strong in endurance and all the rest. I don't think they need to be able to telepathically speak to one another. But that's just me being annoying.
This is why when people say, what fantasy role would you want to play? The answer is always elf. Like, come on.
Yeah. They can do everything. What's the answer of what I would actually be in Middle-earth? Probably a low man of Middle-earth. I'd be Waldreg's, unfortunate brother who isn't even the innkeeper. Susie also said, I'm pretty sure this is London. Yes, it is. Again, I think this is a vision, but yes, it is very clearly the kind of... I can't remember what they called it in season 1 behind the scenes. I think it was something like the path of the memorial path or something like that. Anyway, it's where all the statues of the fallen elves are. So let's carry on, so we try and keep up a decent pace. We then go into, the shot of Galadriel, and obviously looking pretty terrified, and this will obviously line up with the previous shots in trailers where she's about to scream. But yeah, I mean, she looks pretty terrified. I don't think we need to put Galadriel through too much more trauma, but there we are. Anyway, then we move into some shots of orcs. Once again, these are shots of orcs running across what would be the dried up riverbed outside of Eregion, which I think lines up with another shot we're going to see later in the trailer. And then, as we carry on, we get our first shot of something in Numenor. Now, this is where I get to do a little bit of smugness, just a little bit, just a tiny little bit. So don't roll your eyes at me, Anna.
Sorry, I forget people can see us today.
I know. It's horrifying being perceived like this, but also useful to keep us in check. So in May 23 of last year, because I'd had some leaks passed to me about the Numenor plotline, one of the very vague ones I talked about was a scene in which Numenorian guards were going through the city. They were banging on people's doors. They were asking who lived there. They were dragging people from their homes. And it was so nice to see this shot, because I was like, oh, A, thank God, that leak that I'd been given was correct. But B, this is, Anna, I know you'll be happy to talk about this, but this is exactly what we want to see from the Numenorian plotline, right?
I mean, yeah, they're going straight into it. And I think something that I've gathered throughout this promo, because I'm one of those people who's just desperate for more shots of Elendil and Miriel and Numenor in general, is just that the Numenor plot it's in such a dire place this season that I think if they give us anything more than what they have, they're basically giving us everything. And so I quite like that they're pulling it back a bit, so that when we get this for the first time in the show, it will be as intense and as kind of shocking as they need it to be. I mean, it looks like they're kind of going all in straight away with this, civil unrest between the Kingsmen and the faithful. And it's what we like to see. They're not kind of pulling any punches with it.
Yeah, and I think it's... and we'll get on to this next shot in a second, but I think it's really important to note as well that these people doing the dragging of people from their homes and dragging people through the streets, this is the livery of the Royal Guard. So you'll remember from season 1, anytime we were in a scene in the Númenórean court or in the jail where Galadriel and Halbrand were being kept, or any time we were around Miriel, these were the costumes that were being worn. So I don't think I need to spell it out for any book readers, but obviously it's very clear where these orders are coming from, and they're coming right from the very top. Anna, I just need to go and switch some lights on. Do you want to just go through any recent good comments in the chat, and I'll be back in like 20 seconds?
Yeah, of course. So I did just notice one from Jessica who says, will you post a video of this after it's over? I won't, because when these end, I drop all of my responsibilities, but Harry will do all of the editing and all the hard behind the scenes work, and he's going to post a video file, I believe, for anyone who wants to watch us and watch the trailer at the same time. Otherwise, he's just going to post it kind of as a podcast episode as usual, so you can catch up if you have to drop out. No problem at all. Just catching up on some of the other ones. Katie again says that she's kind of making those parallels between Stranger Things and Lord of the Rings. One of my favourite parts of Stranger Things was Eddie and the way he referenced it. And one thing I really loved is because of the time period of Stranger Things. It's before the Jackson films kind of swayed a lot of people's perceptions of Tolkien, so they had the reference to the Scouring of the Shire because that was something that hadn't been cut out as of then. So I loved little things like that.
Yeah. Did you cover that comment from Susie about explaining why she'd brought up where the location of the vision was happening? Or can I do that quickly?
No, I have not even seen it, so go for it.
So I realised that I'd missed that. Susie wasn't just pointing it out for the sake of it. Susie's point was the idea of a vision of Celebrimbor dying in a location where there are all the statues of the dead elves from the First Age. I mean, the symbolism of that on top of everything, we obviously got those lines from season 1 where Galadriel said she always thought she'd end up there carven in wood like her brother and all the other dead elves from the First Age. And it's kind of ironic that she's having that vision there, but it's not her being pinned to one of these statues. It is, of course, Celebrimbor, and again, without getting into spoilers, pretty clear why they're doing that.
Yeah, I mean, if that's what they're showing us in the trailer, then good God, help us. Well, don't help us, help him.
So, again, we're talking about this Númenor plotline, this great sign for us book readers that they're really going to be getting into not just a political and social divide, but one that manifests itself in a really kind of brutal and authoritarian repression of dissent. So then, as we get into this next shot, now this, I think, is so interesting. Because who is in... Let's just describe the shot for anyone who's listening to the audio version of this. We see the Númenórean courtroom. We see a circle of these royal guards, and in the middle there are a group of figures. Now, most of these figures are dressed in the white robes that we saw from season 1 in the Hall of Law, where the librarian just comes and brings Elendil and Galadriel the material they need. I think we talked about this on our last episode. I'd have to go back and listen. But I think we talked about the idea that the Hall of Law is such an interesting kind of Chekhov's gun to have in the first season, because then when you get to the rise of Pharazôn and the rise of the Kingsmen versus the Faithful, having a building that is full of knowledge, that is tied to Númenor's past, Númenor's heritage, Númenor's connection with the elves. Remember, they had the tapestry of Elrond and Elros on the wall. So this idea that the lawmasters are all being rounded up by the guards, or somehow, they've been brought to the court for a reason, that is fascinating to me.
Can I just say that sometimes you terrify me but also impress me at the same time? Because when I look at this in the trailer, I was like, okay, it's a shot of some people kind of clashing with the guards in Númenor. I never once would have looked at that and thought, those are the white robes that they were wearing in that one scene we got in the Hall of Law in season 1, episode 3. But yeah. I think that's very impressive, and I wouldn't have noticed that detail, so that's a really good point.
I know the only thing I'm shocked at is that I've only seen Anne post one message about Númenor in the chat. I know when we get to Valandil and Kemen, there's probably going to be an avalanche of comments. But yeah, no, I think, again, what we try and do on these episodes, and I know for some book readers this might be a little bit frustrating, but we try and keep it a little bit spoiler-free so that people who aren't, familiar with the books don't get completely spoiled. But again, the things to bear in mind looking at this scene is this idea of who stands to gain from Númenor's past, a past which is aligned with the elves being faithful to the Valar, who stands to benefit from that being repressed, shut down. So I know people have been saying there hasn't been a lot of Númenor in the trailers, and I'll tell you from the leaks I have, the reason that is because everything in the Númenor plotline, basically I would say from the third episode, is going to be a huge spoiler. So they really can't show you guys a lot in the trailer because everything is going to be a spoiler, and it's going to be so good, I'll tell you that, guys. Anyway, let's keep moving unless there's any comments you want to address quickly, Anna.
I really like Matt Treehead's last comment. It just says that just changed the whole dynamic of that shot. Like they're on their way to suppressing their own history in favour of Pharazôn. It's just the layers that can be pulled from kind of every single scene is just crazy.
Well, if you want to add an even greater part to that, and let me just double down on the lore nerdery. So, in the scene between Elendil and Galadriel, before they go to the Hall of Lore, Galadriel says, I won't stay here in this island where everyone who sees me hates me. And Elendil says in Quenya back to the language of the elves, you are not not all of us, you're not hated by all, or whatever he says. And then she says, you speak Quenya, and he responds back in English or the common tongue. He says, yes, it is, many of us do. It is still taught in our Hall of Lore. So what is so key there in season 1, they have set up this idea of, despite the fact Númenor has already turned away from the elves, the Hall of Lore is still one place where Elvish is not only spoken, but taught. And for those of you who've read the books, you know that it's one of the previous kings of Númenor who outlaws the speaking of Elvish on the island. So clearly they aren't able to get into all of that because that's in the Silmarillion, they don't have rights to, and it would take a lot of explaining. But I love that they're adding all these connections to it. Just to address this one comment, Diomedia says, are you a little sad that people sent you the spoilers for Númenor? Yeah, I am a little bit, and I've talked about this a little bit on Twitter, but I don't actually like having leaks. I got a lot of leaks about Númenor, and I probably released 2 contextual ones, some stuff about costumes, and then I would say 1 big one. But I just didn't release most of them because I was like, I think people would rather see this and be surprised for the first time in the episodes. And yeah, I'm a little bit disappointed that I'm not going to be seeing or knowing about them for the first time in the episodes. But then again, things like the eagle, which was leaked to me like a year and a half ago, they put in, what was it, the first trailer or the second? So to a certain extent, Amazon have been spoiling some of this stuff for us anyway. Right, let's move on to this next shot of Eärien, because there's also some comments in the chat about Eärien as well. So we see Eärien here, standing, looking very perturbed, and Anna, you tell me if I'm wrong, but on the right, well actually, Anne in the chat, because you'll know for both of us, is that Valandil on the right-hand side, or is that just someone who looks like him?
Harry, I'm not Anne, I could not tell you. That's just pixels to me.
Okay, well, we'll guess. But anyway, Eärien clearly looking quite disturbed by this uproar that's going on in Númenor, which is interesting because from everything we've seen, it seems like they've been hinting towards Eärien going towards, the kind of side of the Kingsmen. So her looking a bit distressed by this is very interesting. I think one of the things we're going to see in season 2 is that she is very much going to be torn between her loyalty to her father, her love for her father, and her newfound appreciation for Pharazôn and the way he's approaching things.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it could be this moment where she's realising the kind of gravity of what she has done or what she's supported, because, Eärien she doesn't know what's going to happen. She doesn't know that people are going to get rounded up. She probably doesn't know just how crazy and tumultuous things are going to get in Númenor. So this could just be the moment where she's realised, oh God, there's weight to this and there's consequences and really bad things are starting to happen, because that look of just, what have I done, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So we'll move on from this because, again, we are still going really slowly, but we'll come back if there are any good comments on this.
We're trying our best.
Then, yeah, exactly. Then we get this shot. So we go through that. We get the shot of Aarion. Then we go into this shot of Sauron in his Anatar form, looking over his shoulder, looking quite evil, but he's clearly inside the Great Forge in Eregion because there's this big stained glass window behind him that we've seen in other shots. Then we go into the shot.
Harry, sorry to interrupt just there. He looks quite evil.
He does. I mean, listen, he might claim he's in his fair form, but you can't be giving people the stink eyes like that and not get called out for it. Also, Anne has told us that it is in fact not Valandil in that last shot, so mystery solved. So then we get this shot of Elrond obviously looking at the scene where the elves are first putting on their rings. I think this is Círdan's hand, by the way, not to, bring it back to Círdan as always, but I think this is Círdan's hand because we can see here that just at the bottom of the screen you can tell that's the Ring of Fire Narya because it's got those little not indentations, it's almost like little coral almost on the outside of it, and as he opens his hand we see Vilya and Nenya, the other two rings, and this is when we get into, I think we can officially say, our first dialogue from Ben Daniels as Círdan, who says, "You are wise to fear these rings. In Sauron's hands they could work an evil beyond reckoning." I mean, Anna, I know we still haven't got actual footage of Círdan that isn't his sandal, his hand, or the back of him, but pretty good to get some dialogue from him, and pretty telling dialogue as well, I think.
It's great, and I think I kind of rationalised to myself today because I was like, are they going out of their way to just not show us Círdan? And then I realised that in the grand scheme of things, he's still a very niche character, so they're probably not thinking, let's not show Círdan for the kind of shock value. They're probably just not thinking about putting him in there much at all. But, as we said, beggars can't be choosers, so a voiceover with Ben Daniels' just unmistakable and incredible voice is more than we can ask for. And I like here that, I'm not going to go too much into this because we talked about it a lot during the last trailer episode, but we get the shot in the last trailer of Vilya and Nenya falling to the ground, and we said, what happens, why do they fall to the ground, and why is Narya not with them? And my theory was that Círdan kind of goes into a bit of a huff and throws them at Galadriel and Gil-galad, which I think is pretty much confirmed here. But yeah, I like that we're getting the kind of precursor to that.
I don't know if he's going to throw them like pocket sand at Gil-galad and Galadriel, but I think he is going to tip them on the floor. But it's kind of weird as well because he's already wearing his Ring of Power. So I still don't know exactly what's happening, but it does have me very curious. I also
Unless it's just Elrond kind of slapping his hand.
Listen, if Elrond's gonna really be a bit of an upstart in the Lindon court, I would love that if he's after he shouts no and they're still doing it and Elrond's like, no, I am not letting this happen, and so he goes to strike them out of Círdan's hand, which would be a really interesting way to look at it. Just going back to a couple of questions on the Numenor section, Superfan K asked, do you guys believe the concept of immortality is going to be explored further in the Numenor storyline? Pretty simple. Yes, there's a reason they ended the season with Pharazôn looking at Tar-Palantir's body and looking pretty kind of disturbed and almost angry about it. Very much they will be getting into it.
Yeah, I mean,
both in this season.
In that scene sorry, I keep interrupting you, but in that scene as well, I think he literally says something along the lines of, all men die, even kings. And I think that they did that to kind of set up where he would be mentally in season 2.
Yeah, I think his last line is something about the fact that his spirit or his soul is now going somewhere that none of them can follow, or the path that none can tread. I'd have to rewatch that last scene, but as you said, his last dialogue is very much framing it that way. So yeah, as we see here, Círdan's hand opening the rings, and let's just talk about this dialogue actually before we get onto the scenes the dialogue covers. So he says, "You are wise to fear these rings. In Sauron's hands, they could work an evil beyond reckoning." Like, I know we've talked about this before, Anna. But obviously, we were both very excited that Círdan's going to be in this season. Very excited that Ben Daniels is playing it. But as we talked about on our Círdan episode, the really important thing about Círdan is that he has more wisdom than any other elf in Middle-earth. And so I think I'm just so pleased they're not having him as just, the shipwright and just this kind of added character. He is clearly going to be the one who's actually giving the correct perspective on the rings, but beyond anyone else.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to what Galadriel says in the last trailer we got, which, she's clearly having a conversation with Elrond, I think, and she says, I don't think I'm being deceived, I think it's guiding me. And I like to think that her, and potentially Gil-galad's, almost blindness to the real power that the rings have just really frustrates Elrond. And I like here that Círdan is sort of the voice of reason, which is even more interesting that he seems to be the first person putting the ring on, So I think that that's going to be a really interesting dynamic. And I'd like to think that this is maybe the conversation that they're having by the little pond. We see the shot of him in the last trailer dipping his hand into the pond, just kind of giving some words of wisdom. And I like that he's not just kind of giving him this wisdom, he's reassuring him as well. He's saying, like, I did take a ring, but you're not wrong for being worried, you're not wrong for feeling this way. Círdan, he's just the best.
Yeah, it's nice, isn't it, that they're not going like some extreme version where Círdan's like, you're all stupid, how could you do this, we've got to destroy them now. He's very much kind of like, no, obviously these rings can be tools for us and they can help us preserve our lands and they are artifacts of great power, but we also have to be cautious. And it is very telling for someone like Círdan, who witnessed all the horrors of the First Age that came about because of the Silmarils, which are obviously the kind of precursor objects of power, forged by, of course, Fëanor's, Celebrimbor's own grandfather, Fëanor. So we obviously get that, and then we get a bunch of scenes that this plays over. So we get Durin and Disa. Oh, I accidentally put the sound on. Sorry if anyone heard that. That was probably really loud. So we go through Durin and Disa. We go through King Durin. Then we get the shot from the first trailer of Sauron walking through Eregion. And then we get this super interesting one of... And I'll just pause it there before it gets to the Barrow-wights. What, Anna... I mean, I'll describe it for our listeners. Sauron is standing in some kind of, top of the gatehouse on a wall in Eregion. It's nighttime, and he's raising his arms as if he's, what was he called? The Night King from Game of Thrones, and kind of raising his arms like, as they've described him, like an Old Testament prophet. What is he doing here? What is he doing?
I mean, my first thought, because I think I saw this image a few days ago, I'm not sure if it was like an official release or kind of a leak somewhere, but I saw it somewhere on my timeline in like very, very low quality. And my first thought was it was almost kind of a triumphant display. But from what we've seen of him so far, I don't feel like he would do that. The shots we've had of him kind of looking pleased or happy, they're quite subdued and subtle, and it just doesn't feel like something that would happen. So my second thought was, we know he's going to be inside Eregion and his forces are going to be outside. Could he be kind of signaling to someone, trying to get someone to do something for him on the outside? I don't know. It could be anything. What do you think, Harry? You're on mute.
I was on mute, thank you. And we're doing okay so far. That is the first time I've tried to speak when I'm on mute, which by our reckoning isn't bad actually. So I don't have too many theories, but I'll just give you my analysis of what we can see. So it's nighttime. The city does not yet appear to have been sieged. Like, I look at this shot and I can't see any burning buildings. I can't see any rubble, I don't think. It all looks calm. So this is clearly before Adar's army starts, going after Eregion. But it could be right before that moment. Now, is he, as you say, trying to send a message to Adar? Like, is he holding up his arms like, come and get me? You think you're going to do this? Yeah, exactly. Like, come on if you think you're hard enough. It is very kind of football hooligan in the terraces going, come on then, bring it on. So I wonder whether, I mean, let's just look at what the people in the chat think it might be. Adu says he is moonbathing. Anne says he does what he's always doing. He's being dramatic. Lavender, he's raising his armies. Beric, this is an interesting one. I think he's about to give a speech, honestly. Others of just him being a poser. He's trying to get the elves of Eregion to do the YMCA. And Transadon fan account, which I think is Transmydon from Twitter, because I assume it's the same person, says, I think he's controlling the elves. My only question would be, if he's controlling the elves, what would he be controlling them to do? That's what I can't really work out, because obviously part of his plan is for Adar to attack Eregion, but
I mean,
it's very interesting to me.
Anne's already said it. He's getting them all to do the YMCA.
Okay.
That's what he's doing. No more theories. We've solved it.
I love this Matt Treeherder in the comments says, "Is this it? Is this all you can conjure me?"
I do wonder kind of at what point during the siege he'll kind of reveal himself and his role in it. So maybe he's kind of, as Beric says, giving a speech, but maybe it'll kind of flip our expectations and he's trying to, pretending to rally the elves. The forces might be amassing outside of Eregion and he's like, come on guys, we can do this, you've got this. And then he just turns around and he's like...
Yeah. Like you say, it all depends on at what stage in the deception is he at this point. Has Celebrimbor worked out that he's been fully deceived? Has he not had that conversation yet that we're going to see later in the trailer? So many questions. Like, I think we could speculate about this all day, but it seems odd to me. I mean, Halbrand's Pouch says maybe he's giving the elves a vision of Eregion to become, if the rings are forged, there are scenes of Eregion looking at Edenic. Maybe he is the one showing those visions to the elves in this scene. And Katie says, I wonder if this is a private moment of himself celebrating him about what he's about to do. This could literally just be him being like, all my plans have come to fruition, right?
I think that would be quite hilarious if it was. And listen, from his perspective, he's really pulled it all off. After, an attempted murder, he's been to Numenor. He kind of sort of outsmarted Galadriel. He has got to have his moment of, I kind of did it, didn't I?
He really is having his, if you come at the king, you better not miss, because he has, Adar's tried to kill him, Galadriel's tried to kill him now, and here he is still just, living his best evil life.
I'd like it if he did the same thing, after that elf kind of goes for him with the sword and misses. I'd love it if he turned around and just kind of...
It would be funny if this becomes his recurring thing throughout the season, like during the Akalabeth, he's on top of the temple, just going like that, and then before the last of Alliance, before they charge him, and it's just a recurring meme of just him T-posing.
I think they should do that now. You can
tell we've been going for an hour and a half.
If that's not something that's already in the works, anyone who hears this, please, can we make this a thing now? Sauron just ends every season,
Yeah, he's doing the statue of Christ in where is it, in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro, that huge statue. He just wants one of those for himself. Oh, you can tell we've been going for an hour and a half.
Yeah, Anne's just reminded us that we've been going for an hour and a half, and we're 44 seconds into the trailer. We have not even made it a minute yet.
Listen, we're going to skip through some stuff that isn't that interesting. So anyway, speaking of skipping through some stuff that isn't that interesting, spooky Barrow-wights. More spooky Barrow-wights. Galadriel killing a spooky Barrow-wight. Anything you want to say about the Barrow-wights?
No, I think we've seen them. We've seen them before.
Yeah.
It's more of them. They're cool.
I could actually do with less of them, right? Like, seeing as it's meant to be this horror-filled scene, I don't need to see more of it in the trailer.
And I think the more of it that we see in the trailer, the more that I'm like, okay, this is a lot of CGI. And I don't mind that because I know that they've done the blending of the kind of practical effects with the stunt performers and everything.
Yeah.
And I know it will look a lot better in the scene itself. But as you said, we can skip past those.
Yeah, so then we get what is maybe my favourite shot of the trailer, which is this gorgeous shot of Eregion. And what's really frustrating about this, so what I wanted to know is, have they because like they zoom in rather than zoom out, which is so irritating, because if you look at, for example, the shot of Eregion that we actually have as our background on this stream, there aren't any walls around it by the river, because of course not, because there's a river, but obviously there are walls for the siege. So what I want to know if they're just retconning it, or if Celebrimbor hears about this army coming and then builds the walls, because like that would make the most plot sense, but obviously I appreciate they might just retcon the city to have walls.
Yeah,
so
I mean, I think it's really hard to tell kind of just from here, but you maybe think if they're kind of in the city and they're just kind of trying to get into the inner works, you know, you can see it kind of rises bit by bit, so whether there's kind of stairs that are destroyed, bridges that are destroyed, who knows.
Yeah, I mean, they may have just edited themselves into a little bit of a pickle with the way they designed it in season 1, but most people aren't going to be like me and have that overhead shot of Eregion as their background for their podcast calls, so they won't worry about this. Like I said, likely retcon. What I will say is, Beric brought up these scenes of Eregion looking Edenic, or sorry, it might not have been Beric, it might have been someone else, but this is one of those shots where it's green, it's lush, it's gold, it's beautiful. I think this tower, it's either this tower here or this tower to the left, which is meant to be the new Great Forge. So obviously we're going to see that, which will be exciting. But yeah, it just looks really, really beautiful.
Yeah, I like it
moving
with
on from this. Oh, sorry.
The subtitle over it. That's probably the most ironic screenshot I've ever seen.
Yeah. Well, as you said, this is where we hear Elrond's voice, which I think is the first time we hear Elrond in the trailer at 47 seconds, when he says, "Eregion must not fall." And then he says, "It will be a mortal blow for Middle-earth." So as we get that, as he says that, we go straight in from beautiful Edenic Eregion into Eregion getting absolutely mashed up, walls being broken, and then we get, let me just adjust this shot so we can get it to where you might want it. Anna, Gil-galad in battle, take it away, I guess?
I don't even know where to start. I mean, this was the one thing that I wanted, and I can't believe we actually got it. We got 3 outfits, including his armor, in one trailer. I mean, I think we were spoiled. It's better than I could have imagined, because I didn't know what they would do for his armor, and then we got that kind of behind the scenes shot of it when Tea with Tolkien went to the kind of sort of behind the scenes Rings of Power event, and I was like, oh my god, I can't wait to see it in action. And I did think that they were going to make us wait until the show itself, but here we are. And this does look like the kind of full live action clip, kind of following on from the behind the scenes clip we got of him, like the exact moment that he was filming. And
yeah,
gosh, there he is. He's wielding Aeglos. Just look at his face. You know, it's as you said, I think you've said it before, Benjamin Walker is a very big guy, and they're using that here. He's just kind of obliterating that orc, which is incredible.
I mean, yeah, it's great. I saw someone in the chat say Gil-galad is having his 2.3 seconds of battle just like the Fellowship prologue. Listen, the Fellowship prologue did both Gil-galad and Elendil dirty, and the one thing I'm sure about the Rings of Power is that for both of those characters, we're going to see what great warriors they are. And this, I mean, like, I was saying on, I think, our last episode, I was like, I know some people are going to be like, Gil-galad shouldn't be at the Siege of Eregion because he sends Elrond himself. And as I said last time, why deny yourself that joy? Why would you possibly want to be like so caring about canon that you would deny yourself scenes of Benjamin Walker kicking ass as Gil-galad? Like, that to me, like, I understand some kind of lore adherence, but the rule of cool and the rule of Gil-galad killing orcs like a badass, I'm afraid that overrules everything.
Yeah, there's not much I can say, but I did think it was quite interesting that a lot of the shots we got of Elrond mid-battle were in the dark, and there were a lot of people around them. This looks to be in the daytime, and there's quite a sparse background. You know, there's not much action going on behind them, so it might just be that Gil-galad comes after the fact, kind of comes maybe at the same time as the dwarves, to just kind of come in clutch and provide a little bit of aid.
Yes.
That you catastrophe
I think
moment.
it's very... Yeah, I think it's very interesting that the only shots we've seen of him in the daylight... I mean, like I said, me and Sarah are going to be doing a real deep dive onto this, but if you... And I've got something like 60 stills already of the battle scenes, and I've worked out a rough idea in my head, but I would say this is towards the very end of the siege, and there's lots of clues you can do that. You've talked about a few of them there, but this is very clearly... after all the night battle scenes we've seen with Elrond, with Damrod, with everyone else. So yeah, this is going to be a real thing. So let's carry on through this. We see Gil-galad fighting. We see Elrond saying that it would be a mortal blow for all Middle-earth. So the only thing we should add about this is, as you said, like Elrond is going to get to Eregion first, and we've seen him bring his forces, which does line up with the books. But it's very clear that perhaps Gil-galad doesn't want to send forces to Eregion initially, because this almost looks like Elrond convincing him, because of course the dialogue is... Eregion must not fall. It will be a mortal blow for Middle-earth. So I almost wonder whether he volunteers to take the forces. Like, Gil-galad doesn't want to order him. He doesn't want to risk him. But Elrond volunteers, and that's where we're going to see Elrond's courage come through.
Yeah, I mean, just from the visual aspect of Elrond, and you can kind of see Gil-galad's shoulder in the background, it looks to be the same scene that we got earlier in the trailer where Gil-galad says, our armies cannot defeat him. So if they're having this sort of argument back and forth about Elrond wants to send these forces and Gil-galad feels it's almost hopeless, I think that would be quite nice, especially if Gil-galad does come after the fact. It would be nice for Elrond to have that moment of his mentor, his almost father figure, being one of the people there coming to save him.
Exactly. So let's carry on with this. The next shot we get is Galadriel in a cage, to put it bluntly. She is in a cage. Her wrists are manacled to the side of the cage. We see orcs on the right-hand side of the cage. And in the background, if you're very eagle-eyed, what you'll notice is that is the skyline of Eregion burning. So this is clearly right before that shot we saw in the last trailer, where Elrond's cavalry is about to charge. Now, I think maybe we should leave talking about Galadriel being in a cage until we get to the scenes of her and Adar talking, right? Because I feel like that's where we might be able to tell a more cohesive narrative around it.
Agreed. We can leave that one for now.
Okay, so that carries on. Then we get this shot, which I know you referenced earlier, of this wave kind of crashing. Now, I actually think you were right. I do think this is Eregion, and I think this is, however they're going to dam the river, I think that's what we're seeing. Because if you look at the mountains in the background, the rocks, it does kind of look like the landscape around Eregion.
You just love a good rock analysis, don't you?
Listen, I didn't even do geography at GCSE, but I do love a good rock analysis. It just tickles my brain in all the right sort of ways. But no, genuinely, I think you're right here. Although the fact that it's so violent, the way this water is moving in a wave, it makes me think they're going to be doing something pretty drastic to divert the river.
Listen.
And that's, again, yeah.
All I'm going to say is if Damrod flopped down hard enough into the water, it could create a wave of that size.
Well, there we go. That is the kind of astute analysis. That's the kind of astute analysis we come for. So we get the shot of the wave. We then get the shot of Disa and the other stones. Now, what I think is really interesting about the shot of Disa singing is that it appears that one of the other stone singers has her arm on her shoulder, almost as if she's holding her back. And we go straight from that into a shot of the big boulder falling onto the bridge in Khazad-dûm, which I remember when we first saw it in the very first trailer, we thought that might be a vision. So going back to that shot of Disa, what do you think? Is this Disa couldn't be causing, or is it just misleading editing? It's fascinating to me, though, that one of them looks like they're holding her back.
Well, you see, my theory about this is that it sort of parallels the plea to the rocks from season 1. Because one of the things we've been told about this season is that Disa almost loses that connection that she had to the stone and Khazad-dûm. So what if it's something along the lines of, and I am just guessing here, she sings one of these pleas again to try and kind of connect with the mountain, but because she's lost that connection, it almost backfires and it causes more destruction than it kind of protects them from.
Oh, do you know what? I'm just going to accept that as the truth. Anna, that is 10 out of 10 theory crafting. I don't even think we need to... Yeah, I don't even think we need to even debate that. I think you're just right, and if you're not right, we'll come back and edit this live stream and have you say something different, so you were never wrong. But for now, I think that's a great theory. And of course, as we saw in the release of the announcement of the soundtrack titles from the album, one of them is Stone Singers with Sophia Nonvetti, so that may be related to this scene. And for those of you who want to listen to more discussion about the soundtrack titles, then you can listen to the latest episode of the Daily Rings of Power podcast, which is available on all platforms, including YouTube, so go make sure you subscribe. Anyway, apart from the self-plug, let's keep it moving, because as we've said before, we are almost at a minute mark. So we go in from that into, finally, this scene of Adar, what we think is talking to Galadriel, and he says, sooner or later, Sauron's eye... Is it bores a hole? I think it's meant to be bores a hole, as in like bores a hole in your mind. Yeah, Sauron's eye bores a hole and the rest of him slithers in. So we get that shot as he's saying that. And then we see Pharazôn holding the Palantir, we see Rune, we see the orcs, and then we see him once again before we get to the shot of Eregion. So I'll just bring it back for the sake of these subtitles to the shot of Adar. A, because he's just quite pretty, so why not have him on screen? I think this is really interesting, and I think it's really interesting that in Season 1, obviously, we had Adar as a captive of Galadriel and them kind of exchanging barbs. And now we're almost seeing them having another conversation, but it's almost like they found their common enemy once again, and they're trying to, they're trying to find a way to work together, perhaps. Now, her being in the cage, which we'll get to in a second, I think slightly undermines the fact they're working together. But to me, this almost feels like Adar trying to explain to Galadriel how Sauron goes about his business.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like you might be one step closer to getting that moment you want of the almost Pirates of the Caribbean-esque Barbossa and Elizabeth mealtime moment. So we might be just a little bit closer to that one for you. There is a little bit I want to talk about regarding Adar and Galadriel, but it's kind of regarding a quote he says a bit later on. So I think really all I have to say about this one is that I like the cut to the shot of Pharazôn with the Palantir. Just a nice bit of visual storytelling, that's essentially what's going to happen to him in coming seasons.
Well, exactly. This idea of Sauron's eye boring a hole, and then where are the two places we get that we know Sauron has influence? We know Númenor, which he's going to interact with as we kind of get towards the last third of the Akalabeth story, and we also get Rune, and we know Rune is the one place where Sauron was very effective in terms of converting men to his following, manipulating them, and the men of the East ended up falling under Sauron's dominion. So it's very nice visual storytelling. As Beric says, this is obviously an extension of the line from the original teaser trailer about, the rest of him slithers in, which obviously caused us much hilarity when we recorded that episode many weeks ago. As Diomedia says, this shot reminds me of that season 1, episode 6 conversation. I mean, of course, it is intentionally being framed that way, and that idea of them having dinner like Barbossa and Elizabeth. The only thing I'll say is every time I think of that, I just think someone's got to do a pun like, you best believe you're in a Middle-earth tale because you're in one. Like, I just think it would be nice if they did a little nod to it. So, like we said, we'll return to... I promise, guys, we will return to the idea of Galadriel being in the cage, but we want to get to the kind of last scenes of Adar and Galadriel talk together. But I think everyone's right that this is very much an inversion of that Season 1, Episode 6, in terms of the power dynamics, in terms of the who's talking to who from a position of dominance in this conversation. So we get the Palantir, we get Rune, we get these... I mean, we can just say these orcs, they look fab, don't they?
They look incredible. They've got that same kind of confidence that Sauron has with his T-pose. They have that shared confidence there.
They really do have that shared confidence. So they go through that. We see Sauron once again looking at this Balrog in the brazier. Now that we know that Sauron visits Khazad-dûm, I now think, we speculated in our last episode that maybe he's conjuring this vision to terrify the citizens of Eregion or Celebrimbor. But I think now that we know that he goes to Khazad-dûm himself, I think this is going to be part of his, pitch for the dwarves accepting the 7 Rings of Power.
And we've made it to a minute. Well
we
done,
made it
us.
to a minute. Brilliant. How long's that taken us? 1 hour and 50. So, listen, we'll get through the second half of the trailer quicker, I'm sure. Then we get these beautiful shots of Eregion, and just kind of looking like a real idyllic paradise. Now, of course, the first thing everyone is going to notice in here, and the most important thing, is that Celebrimbor is standing in front of this statue of Feanor that we've all been so excited to see. But the real question everyone wants to know is, what the hell is this thing that this elven lady has got on her lead? I've seen people in my Twitter comments telling me this is a real breed of dog. It looks like a dog-goat cross. Like, do dogs have horns now? Anna, please educate me if you know something about this.
I mean, I've seen this breed of dog before. I don't know anything about it except that every time I see kind of a picture of one of these dogs, the caption is always like, this dog is about to tell you 3 riddles and you have to answer them all correctly. And I think that they've really nailed the vibe of like the type of dog the elves would have. I'm so sorry, I think I broke you with that one.
Answer me these riddles 3 and Silmarils ye shall have. It's just...
I mean,
listen,
talking dogs,
if we find...
it could happen.
Yeah. Listen, if we find out that Sauron, this is actually one of it, like, I've seen people saying that because this shot looks so kind of Edenic and blissful that it could be a vision of Eregion. If this is actually Sauron in one of his forms as this weird dog, I will lose my mind. If, like, you know, Celebrimbor's walking along, doesn't realise his vision, and then this dog just looks up at him and starts talking to him. That's how I'd write the script.
Me too, and I think you're right about this vision. I mean, it could go back to what people say about him showing Celebrimbor about what Eregion could be if more rings are crafted. But one thing I do like is that it literally could just be because he's walking behind it, but even in this vision or even in this shot, he's still walking behind Feanor. He's still in Feanor's shadow, which is just, it's so good.
Such good visual storytelling. I mean, just in terms of like other evidence in support of it being a vision, is if you look in the background, just on either side of Feanor, you get these white birds, and these are the same design of birds we saw in Galadriel's scene where she's heading to Valinor. In episode 1 of season 1, these kind of long-tailed white birds, same exact design. And then there's this white horse in the background, and you've got some people, you know, doing some stitching or, you know, sewing. You've got these people having a lovely picnic, someone back there painting in the background. And if you remember in season 1, Celebrimbor talks about wanting Eregion to almost be like this place that artisans from all over Middle-earth could come to. And so I'm not 100% convinced it's a vision, but I do think that there's a good possibility, just because it seems too perfect, right? It's not that it even looks nice, it looks too perfect.
It's like like one of the following shots we get, I think it might be kind of straight after this, is 2 elves. I think they're literally just kind of like running past. They look very happy. It almost reminds me of the shot we got of kind of the elven children running in Valinor in season 1. So if that's maybe the feeling he's trying to invoke, if it is a vision.
Exactly. And then we get the shot of Celebrimbor, which we think is probably part of this, whether it's a vision or whether it's reality, you know, whichever interpretation you want to see. And he almost looks happy and kind of in a dreamlike state, but he also, there's a certain sadness behind the eyes as well, which I think is very telling. And as we get these next few scenes, we have Sauron say to him, "You sought peace, I gave it to you." And then we get into this shot that you were talking about of these elves. And if you look, they're even these little, I don't know what you'd call them, these little toys they have. They almost look like miniature kites, but they're also in the shape of those birds with long tails that we saw just a second ago and we saw in the Valinor plot. And I think you're right, it does just seem too dreamlike to be real.
Yeah, and I think Beric just said it's a vision of what Eregion could be, a rival to Valinor, if only Celebrimbor keeps listening to Sauron. And I think, in my eyes, that's kind of hit the nail on the head of what this is.
Exactly. And remember, Celebrimbor said, what was one of the first things Celebrimbor said to Halbrand in season 1? When Halbrand asks him what the jewels are for, he had said that he basically wanted to use them to bring Valinor to Middle-earth. And so I think it's incredibly telling that he's now almost giving him that vision. And so he says, "You sought peace, I gave it to you." And Celebrimbor responds with, "This is hardly a gift," which I think is like, this is going to be the kind of this is the tipping point. This is the fulcrum moment of the season where Celebrimbor has suddenly realized that all these gifts, all this knowledge, all this kind of mentoring and guidance that Sauron has been giving him, or I should say Anatar has been giving him, it's all a poisoned chalice. It's all going wrong. Now, we don't know what is going to make him suddenly say hardly a gift, but this for me, like, I would be shocked if this isn't the first moment we see Celebrimbor really start to question Anatar.
I also just like that they're flipping that moment from the last trailer on its head, you know, what am I to call you? A sharer of gifts. And he's finally got to the point where he realises he's not been sharing gifts. And is it just kind of weird framing? Is that candle like behind them, or is it in between them? I cannot figure that out.
So I think Celebrimbor looks like he's almost holding a candle. Over his right shoulder, there's one of those smaller forges that I think this one is in his study, which is attached to the Great Forge, but is on that kind of mezzanine level where we see the balcony. So I think this is inside his study or on the balcony to it. But yeah, I think the candle's in front of him. But why would he be holding a candle? Again, is this going back to the idea that maybe Sauron's showing him a vision in the flame of the candle? That would be a really interesting thing.
Maybe Sauron woke him up and he just came out with the candle, like they're like a who goes there kind of moment.
I think it's daytime, but I do like your theory. But Sufan K in the chat also came up with a good idea, which was it would be messed up if Sauron was using that Edenic vision of Eregion to fool Celebrimbor, while in real life Eregion is being destroyed right in front of him and he can't see it. That would be so cruel. I'd be excited to see that. And also just shout out to the Age of the Rings, who said, just stopping by, going to watch later, but want to say thanks to both of you for everything you guys do for the community, which is just super nice. So thank you very much. Okay, so we get him saying, this is hardly a gift. Then we get one of my favourite shots from the trailer, and this like blew my mind. So Celebrimbor looks in the mirror, he looks normal, he looks like himself, and we hear him say once, what have you done to me? Then it flickers and the mirror is all dark. It's like the darkness of Sauron has all enveloped it, and instead we see Celebrimbor looking beaten up. There's cuts on his face, his face is ashen, it's covered in dirt and soot, and the mirror, it's almost like the darkness is closing around the light of the mirror, so there's only a small amount of light left. I mean, I think this is all part of the same scene, but I think, you know, we've heard Charles Edwards talk in interviews about how there's gaslighting, there's manipulation, how he played it as if there was almost violent domestic abuse happening off screen that would cause him to flinch when Anatar spoke to him. And this just feels like, boy, is this going somewhere really dark.
Yeah, and I mean, it could even be a sort of tell of, you know, we've got these theories that he's going to be shown these kind of idyllic visions, and when in reality it could almost be this kind of destruction that's in front of him. So whether that's what he's seeing in the mirror, you know, Sauron's trying to say to him, like, no, you're happy, this is good, this is working, and he's almost fighting against that to kind of see what's really in front of him. And I like that we've got the kind of extension of the line from the last trailer, you know, the what have you done to me? We got him shouting it in the last trailer, but we get it kind of repeated here, and he says it quite softly first, and I like that he almost says it, he kind of just throws it out there, and then he kind of considers it, and he's like, what have you done to me? You know, we feel that anger rising and building and just kind of exploding out of him, and God, just this is where Charles Edwards just he just shines, you know. He really stole the show for me again in this trailer.
I mean, you don't need to get me started about Charles Edwards, but I mean, it's already phenomenal. Just pick up on a couple of the comments in the chat. I think Aru and Halbrand's Pouch are both on the same page, both of them talking about the fact that the shot of him looking all kind of disheveled and dark in the mirror might be the reality. I'm not 100% convinced on that, but I do love the idea that it could be either way. It could be the reality is things are still okay in Eregion, but he's seeing the way things are going to go. or things have got this bad and he doesn't realize that, as Halbrand's pouch says, things are rotting rather than flourishing. I mean, Anne also makes a good joke. POV, you deactivate your Instagram filter while taking a selfie, which, I mean, I don't think there's an Instagram filter on Earth that can help me, so I can't necessarily relate to that, but I do appreciate it. And Joshua Mitten comes up with a really interesting one, where Josh says, I wondered if this is a view of his soul being degraded, similar to the ring wraiths, which is so interesting because, as you know, if you read from some of Tolkien's more kind of sparse extended writings, elves' physical form is in some ways affected by the state of their spirit, their Fëa. And so if this was the idea that Celebrimbor's Fëa is being corrupted, similar to how a ringwraith is, it would be fascinating if they are... and we know the showrunners are huge fans of Tolkien's more obscure writings. And I think you might be on something, Joshua, here, that this is idea... And Gil-galad even talks about it with the Great Tree in Lindon in Season 1. He says, this blight is but an outer manifestation of, our inner... the inner dimming of their light. I can't remember the exact quote. And so it would be amazing if, after we saw this happen to the Great Tree in Lindon in Season 1, we now see Celebrimbor's person reflect that idea of the outer manifestation of an inner reality.
I mean, I can't remember exactly the quote off the top of my head, but it just, the looking in the mirror just really... The first thing I thought of was Adar and Galadriel's conversation in Season 1 about, the search for the darkness beginning with your own reflection, just look in the mirror, and whether this is his moment of realising, like, oh my god, what's happened to me?
Yeah, I think very clearly they like these kind of callbacks, and as you said, Adar saying to Galadriel, perhaps your search for Morgoth's successor should have ended in your own mirror. Again, just a lovely throwback. So as you said, we get this shot, and then we have him doing his screaming, what have you done to me, which, oh god, breaks my heart every time. And actually, one of the most amazing things, I'm just going to rewind this second, it's a little bit of a longer cut of him screaming, what have you done to me? For those of you, you might see it on the stream now, but go back and watch the video. Watch how Celebrimbor's whole body shakes in either fear or anger at the end of it. He's literally like vibrating either with like fear or terror. And look how angry Anatar looks at being spoken to this way. And one of the things we've heard in interviews from Charles and Charlie is that while it is a one-sided manipulation, there is a push and pull, there is a give and take. Anatar needs Celebrimbor as much as Celebrimbor needs him. That's why this relationship is so fascinating. And so I think the fact that he's furious is because this is Celebrimbor pushing back against him. And then we get this great line, which I just have to get to. Look at Celebrimbor's face when he says this. Who are you? Truly. There's like... Celebrimbor is not the victim at that point. He is fighting back against whatever Anatar is doing to him.
And I just sorry to just go back one shot, but that moment we get where it kind of pans into Anatar, it's almost a disbelief that he's being spoken to that way. And for anyone, we probably won't be able to see it kind of in full here, but for anyone who's watched the trailer in whole, the way his whole face just twitches, it's kind of like he's fighting to keep that rage suppressed. And God, it's so good. He doesn't speak a word, but you know exactly how he feels. Again, keep that. You're supposed to be the great deceiver. Like, keep it inside.
Do you know what I think about that is, the only other shot this is reminded me of from Charlie Vicker's performance is the scene where he has Adar under his spear and Galadriel's telling him not to kill him. And he had that same look of just like, I am a hair's breadth from snapping on him. And it's just like you said, that twitch of the muscle in his cheek it's kind of terrifying. So we get the, who are you? Truly. And then we get one of my favorite lines from the trailer, because this to me, it shows me that the showrunners and the writers fundamentally understand Anatar as a character. He says, I am the one keeping the storm at bay. And the reason why I say this shows they understand it is because for those of you who listened to one of my more recent episodes, I opened with the reading from the Silmarillion, where Anatar is speaking to Celebrimbor, and he says, wise is High King Gil-galad, and, mighty is High King Gil-galad, and wise no law is Master Elrond. But why would they not want us to make this land as great as Valinor? Why would we not want to use this knowledge to make... And he basically says this thing, I'm going to fluff the exact quote, but he says, I perceive that you wish to make Middle-earth as great as I do. And so Anatar here is responding to this, accusation of who are you really? And Anatar is saying, I'm exactly who you need. I'm the only one who's going to stop the elves from fading. And if you want, it is very similar to his last lines to Galadriel in, season 1, episode 8, when he says, you have no choice. The elves cast you out for deigning to ask for a petty few soldiers. What will they do when they find out Sauron lives because of you? It's the same thing. It's him trying to convince the elves that without him they are doomed. And this is where I'm like, yes, the manipulation's great. Yes, the evil's great. But this is where you look at it and that the showrunners understand what Anatar's deception and manipulation is all about.
I think this is just one of those moments for me when the casting, the writing, the lore, the showrunners, everything just peaks. It's all of those things coming together. And that's why I don't... listen, it's okay to have criticisms of the show. There's might be things you don't like. There's definitely things that I don't like about it. But to say that the casting is bad in general, the writing is bad, the showrunners don't know what they're doing... How can you look at these moments between Charles Edwards, Charlie Vickers, you have the influence of J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay, you have the writing which is clearly taking that influence from those wider texts, and it all culminates here. How can you look at that and say that it's fundamentally bad or misunderstanding Tolkien? Because it's not.
It's not. I just want to quickly go to a couple of comments in the chat. One, I want to say bye to Erin Lascallon, who I know is one of our most loyal listeners to the podcast. Erin's got to go, yes. Which is totally fair enough. We've been going for 2 hours. Erin, thank you so much for joining us.
You.
Like I said, the VOD will be up afterwards, so I hope you have a lovely rest of your evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you are. I do actually want to address a comment from Lavendar, who says there's actually very little of Anatar in this trailer. All the conversation pieces are with Sauron, different clothes and hair. Okay, this is where I want to disagree with you. I would have agreed with you after the first trailer, because I was convinced that everything of Sauron in this black outfit is him as Sauron revealed. I actually don't think that anymore, and there's 2 reasons. One, this shoulder piece of armor is very similar to one of if you saw the pictures from Comic-Con, we saw a shot of Na'vi's armor, and it has a very similar kind of almost feather scale-like design. 2, we see him wearing this in Khazad-dûm in one of the earlier shots. And 3, I think it's not about there being an instant switch from Anatar to Sauron. It's as he gets deeper and deeper into his manipulation of an abuse of Celebrimbor, he takes on this more severe aspect. So I don't think that we can say, oh, this isn't Anatar. This is very much still Anatar as far as Celebrimbor is concerned. But it's not Sauron. I mean, obviously it's all Sauron, so I'm kind of getting myself in a semantic muddle here. But my point is that, this is still while he's trying to dominate and manipulate Celebrimbor without the use of force. I don't know if you agree, Anna.
I think I'm completely on the same page as you, because there's definitely some shots that we do get of him, kind of some spoken lines, especially in the last trailer, where it's very obvious that Celebrimbor knows who he is, what's happened. But it's these ones where I still think they're in the process of figuring it out. He hasn't quite revealed himself, and he's still trying to keep those kind of roots in him. Because Celebrimbor, he's angry, he's confused, but it's that confusion, I think, that keeps Anatar going and keeps the deception going.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, perfectly said. I couldn't add any more. So we get this, I am the one keeping the storm at the bay. Then we get, and by the way, I just love how he's almost, you can see him as he's saying that line, he's leaning towards Celebrimbor. It's like he's trying to physically impose himself upon him. And again, this goes back to this thing Charles Edwards talked about, that he played Celebrimbor as if there were things happening off screen where Anatar was being physically violent towards him. And I think this is, again, part of it, where Charlie's playing it as if he's not only emotionally manipulating Sauron, Celebrimbor, he's also physically trying to manipulate him. So we get this shot. Then we get a shot of, as we've seen before, Eregion being completely, bombarded by the catapults. I don't know if you agree, Anna, but I think this blonde-haired woman, I think this might be Amelia Kenworthy's character, Medania, right?
Yeah, I think I saw kind of a more HD picture on Twitter, and when you zoom in, I think it's quite clear that it is her. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, she's going to be an interesting character because she's going to be kind of our representation of all the other Smiths in Eregion. Obviously, they can't have 12 different Smiths from the books, but not that there were any named in the books, but my point is we're not going to see the whole Brotherhood of the Jewelsmith, but Medania is clearly going to be our kind of window into them. So we get that. Then we get a shot of Celebrimbor in the rubble. And I don't think this is from the end of the siege. I think this is probably before we get all those shots from the start of the trailer where he's facing down Sauron in the Forge. I think he does just get caught up in the bombardment like everyone else. And I think this might be the moment where he really just goes, I have so been betrayed here.
Not to make it about Aragorn, but the first thing I thought when I saw that was just that, after the explosion at Helm's Deep, and you just get Aragorn kind of flopping to the ground. That was what it reminded me of.
Yeah. It's good, isn't it? It's good. It's a nice little nod. I mean, also, we haven't talked much about it, but how good has the cinematography been through this trailer? Just outstanding.
I think it's one of those things where we're so used to the insane cinematography at this point, it's not something you even, point out. It just is.
Yeah, and I will say, because it's weirdly, this is going to sound like a weird plug for myself, but it's genuinely not. My interview with Alex Dissenhoff, who's the cinematographer for Rings of Power, is not actually one of my most listened to episodes. And I'm like, how are there more people who want to listen to me and you natter for 4 hours than listen to an hour of me talking to the person who literally shot 2 of the episodes of season 1 and by the time I spoke to him, had already shot 4 episodes of season 2. So all I'm saying is if you haven't listened to that interview, go to the Daily Rings of Power podcast, because Alex will have shot a lot of these scenes we're seeing, especially in the big battle scenes. So, yeah, anyway, that's just a plot.
Might be worth kind of resharing, because I think you might have done it kind of during the off-season, so it might have just been that the interest was a little bit stagnant.
Yeah, I'm just being a little bit... All I'm saying is don't listen to me and Anna talk all the time. Go listen to one of the few cool things I've done. Anyway, so we get this shot of Celebrimbor. We get an orc crashing down, killing someone. We get dead bodies, so this is obviously just Eregion in carnage. Then we get... Oh, Anna, you might have to talk about this image first, because I'm getting upset. I'm literally doing the pose I did in my trailer reaction, which is also now on YouTube, against my better judgment. But I saw this, and you guys who've seen my trailer reaction, you know what I feel like I'm going to cry again looking at this.
You know what, they kind of hit us with a double whammy, because it's not just the shot we get of him, we hear him crying as well. And he's not just, because, one of the things that I think is quite funny in Tolkien adaptations is people love kind of a silent shot of someone crying and a tear very gracefully falls down their face. No, he is sobbing, he is violently crying here. And it's not even just that, it's Sauron, Anatar, whatever form he's in, looming over his shoulder, like the devil on his shoulder as he cries. Oh my god, what an insane shot. It's the first thing I thought when I saw this is just Charles Edwards is gonna break my heart. And it's like you said, if I think about it too much, I will start tearing up. It's heartbreaking.
The thing I think about it is that the tragedy of Celebrimbor's character is that everything, and I'm going to bring it back to Peoples of Middle-earth later for a different quote, so I won't go into it again. But the point of Celebrimbor's character is that he is stuck between these two worlds. And on one side, he wants to live up to his grandfather's legacy. He wants to be someone that will be remembered for doing something great. He wants to make Middle-earth a better place through his works. And at the same time, he is the only Feanorian who really ever kind of recanted what Feanor and the Sons of Feanor did. We know from the Silmarillion, Unfinished Tales, and Tolkien's other writings that Celebrimbor basically was estranged from his father Kurufin because of what Kurufin did. And so it's just this idea that, like, he just wants to do the right thing. He just wants to make Middle-earth a better place. And he's entrapped by the word. I'll swear if I keep talking about him. But just the fact that Sauron uses him in this way and abuses him. And, like, this is clearly part of the same vision where he looks in the mirror and then he's going to get the "what have you done to me?" And it just, it breaks my heart because he just wants to make Middle-earth a better place. And like you say, he's not just crying, he's not just in horror, he's full body sobbing, he is losing his sanity here, I think, almost. And it just, it breaks my heart.
And just look at the juxtaposition of him, like, violently sobbing, and then Anatar just looks, he doesn't even look angry, it's just that complete nonplussed look that I think is even more unnerving because there's no emotion on his face whatsoever.
I could just absolutely murder Sauron. I wish I could just reach through the screen and throttle his smug face and his, like, Dyson straightened hair and his stupid black and gold costume and, his nice little belted snatched waist because he's trying to be like Celebrimbor. It makes me so, like, fictional characters stop angering me like this. I mean, yeah.
You know what's quite funny is that, and I think you might actually genuinely hate me for this, is that even looking at him in this shot, knowing what he's going to do, what he has done at this point, I feel less anger towards him than any shot of him as Halbrand.
Yeah, which is saying something. Which is saying something.
But yeah, I don't think that was an overreaction from you at all. I think he deserves death.
Agreed. He absolutely deserves death. Right, let's move on, because otherwise I will start crying about it. So we go from that to this shot of, oh, look, I'm Anatar. I'm so pretty. Look at my golden circlet. Look at me having a nice time, helping forge the rings. You absolute, mother effort. You melon farmer. Yeah, I mean, it is a gorgeous shot. I mean, maybe we'll just pause to say it's a gorgeous shot of him, isn't it? We can give him that, at least. He does look very pretty.
It's a great shot, and we just got a really funny comment from Louis who said, "We solved the scene before where he spreads his arms. He's offering free hugs for sobbing elves."
Yeah. Okay, there is one comment. I love that. There is one comment, as though, from Katie, who's bringing up one of my favourite topics to discuss, which is the way in which Celebrimbor and Sauron is very much Hannibal and Will Graham from the Hannibal TV series. And Katie brings up the fact there's an apathy there, which is part of Hannibal's cruelty to Will Graham. Now, this isn't a spoiler, but at the end of Season 2, there's a great exchange where Hannibal is talking to Will, and he's talking about how he changed him. And Will says back to him, "I've changed you too." And that is the one thing I hope we get from this Celebrimbor, Sauron, Anatar story, is that, yes, Anatar is going to overcome him, but in the process, Celebrimbor is going to have moments where he's almost imposing his own will on Anatar. So I think we have heard good signs from the interviews, but I just do want this to be... It is a two-sided relationship, and while the manipulation is in one way, as we said before, because Anatar needs Celebrimbor, I want there to be that push and pull, that cat and mouse, as Charles Edwards described it.
I mean, it's like that shot we talked about straight after Celebrimbor has that, what have you done to me outburst. He seems shocked that someone's actually kind of daring to stand up to him, so I like that they've given him that fire. We've talked about he's a descendant of Feanor. He has that spirit of fire within him.
Exactly. Only thing I'll say is, for anyone who has watched Hannibal in the chat, please write in the chat, "Anna, you must watch Hannibal," because Anna has been promising me for like a month now to watch it, and I swear every few days Anna goes, "I'm going to start it tomorrow," and then what happens, Anna?
Listen, it is my next thing that I'm going to watch. It's mine. I promise you. I find it hard to start new things. Okay, it's when I've watched the first episode, great. It's just I have to like psych myself up to start new things.
All right. Well, I'm just gonna try and get a bit of peer pressure. And anyway, so we get a beautiful shot of Anatar, and then we go into some shots of some particularly gruesome orcs. I mean, nothing we really need to say here. I mean, but look at that prosthetics. That is absolutely horrifying.
They look amazing.
Disgusting. So we get that. Then we get one of my favourite shots of this show. I mean, this is like, you know when in the Silmarillion they talk about the elven armies of the First Age marching to war? When I saw this with the light pouring in, with the columns of elves, with I think what might even be Gil-galad in the distance on horseback, judging by the golden robes, I was just like, this is the host of Finarfin marching to war at the War of Wrath. Like, it just, this is so gorgeous.
I'm just gonna out myself as being an idiot, but when this shot came on for the first time, I had to like rewind to watch it again, because I convinced myself that building to the left was a hobbit hole, and I was like, how did we end up here? Why are we in the Shire, and why is there an army of elves marching through the Shire?
The elves are going to war with Sauron, but first they are going to go and put down the Shire Rebellion and remind those hobbits why they're the bad guys. But actually, I think what I think it might be is, and I know Bree, Twitter user Kierdan Lover, so of course Bree arrived at this. I think this might be the Grey Havens. I mean, look at that building, the way the moss is covering it, the way it almost looks like we might be on the coastline. Could this be one of our first shots of the Grey Havens, or are we just all delusional?
I mean, one of our theories was that they kind of went there on their way as kind of a stopping point to elsewhere, so this could be where they kind of prepare themselves for war.
Yeah. I mean, I hope so. I mean, it just looks gorgeous, whatever it is. So we get that shot, then we get... Okay, this is where we can now properly talk, I think, about Adar and Galadriel, right? Because I know you had some points you had to make. So Adar says to Galadriel, Sauron is my enemy as much as yours. I can help you destroy him. And we get these two shots. We get Adar and Galadriel with orcs behind them, and then we get the shot overlooking this huge camp of orcs around fires. So this must be when Galadriel realizes how big Adar's army that they've amassed is. But Anna, I know you wanted to talk about this scene and this dialogue.
I mean, I've made so many comparisons to season 1, but I don't think I could listen to this quote without it, because, you know, this is Adar talking to Galadriel, and he says, Sauron is my enemy as much as yours. I can help you destroy him. And the first thing I thought of was Galadriel and Miriel's interaction in season 1, where Galadriel says to her, Sauron was once your people's enemy as much as mine. You know, I call on you to finish the task left undone and reforge the alliance between Numenor and elves. There's no way that that's a coincidence, that parallel between the two. And I like to think that, you know, we don't know how Galadriel ends up in the cage, but it looks like somewhere along the way that alliance has kind of fallen amiss somewhere. But I like that almost foreboding that this task that she set out to do with Miriel, it didn't work. You know, Sauron had the upper hand, and, you know, it might just be that it's gonna happen again. You know, they're gonna try and ally themselves and go against him, and it's not gonna work.
Exactly. Now, the thing I'll say that's interesting about this is, this is where we can talk about him being, Galadriel being in the cage earlier in the trailer. So what I think is, Galadriel and Elrond's company, obviously, they're trying to get to Rhaegon, they're scouting, they come across Adar's army. Elrond says, we need to go back, you know, to warn everyone, and Galadriel clearly decides, no, I'm going to, you know, as Galadriel does, I'm going to take it into my own hands. She gets captured by the orcs, as we see in that scene of the forest of her fighting them and shooting them with flaming arrows. She gets brought to Adar. They have this conversation where Adar tries to convince her to leave Sauron to him. And then I think she's going to refuse, and that's when he's going to say, okay, well, if you're not going to help me, and if you won't leave Sauron to me, I will bring you as a prisoner, and I can have value of you. Because either he's going to think he can use her as a hostage to try and draw Sauron out, because he's going to think, well, we know Sauron was obsessed with her in season 1, and he, you know, he obviously saw him in his Halbrand form with Galadriel. Or he thinks he can use her as bait and a hostage for the Elven forces to either, you know, lower the defenses of Eregion, or when Elrond's army comes, obviously we see her in that scene. So I think it's very much that he's going to give her the choice to basically say, you can stay out of my way, or you can help me. And if you don't want to do, and then she's going to refuse because Galadriel is not one for taking orders from others. And that is when Adar's going to go, well, you kept me in chains last time and threatened me. I'm not going to threaten to kill you, but I am going to use you against... Because in Adar's view, Galadriel, for him, is not really his enemy to the same extent Sauron is, who he tried to kill at the start of the Second Age.
Yeah, I have some mixed feelings about Adar. I think my mind changes on him every time we get new clips, new footage. I really go back and forth, but I like the idea that whatever fraught alliance they might kind of establish, no matter how short it is, I like the idea that they're both doing it for themselves. You know, Galadriel's doing it to get out and survive, and Adar is doing it to see if he can kind of keep her in check enough to actually go up against Sauron. You know, we all know it's not going to work, however she ends up in that cage. And I wonder if they did just have like a Galadriel-sized cage sitting around, or if they get to work building it while she's there. Who knows? But yeah, I don't think it's going to last long.
I like that your concern is, did they have a Galadriel-sized cage sitting around? When, Anna, consider the fact that in this trailer, we've seen them build catapults, siege weapons, ladders. Do you not think they could probably fashion together a cage in short... Like, doesn't sound like the world's biggest engineering problem.
I think they could, but I would like to see it. Like, I would like to have a moment of the... You know, it could be part of one of their arcs. Like, there's this kind of middle management orc, as you put it before.
Anna, we've been going for 2.5 hours. Anna, for the love of God.
And listen, this is how he proves himself to Adar, by building the cage that keeps Galadriel in it.
Save me. Now I'm Celebrimbor going, what have you done to me? What have you done to me, Anna? It's 10 o'clock at night and you've got me explaining the mechanics of how orcs build cages.
Listen, this is what you get for inviting me back.
I know. I do just want to address one of the comments in the chat, which was Halbrand's Pouch saying, can you talk about Adar's identity theories? We talked about this a little bit on our episode on, it was like the Tom Bombadil, Adar, and the Empire of News episode. I think that was episode 36, 37. You'll probably be able to go and check. I think the most telling thing we got was in the first feature with Sam Hazeldine, the written interview. I think it was Entertainment Weekly, maybe. He said that Adar had basically tried to strike a deal, or had been offered a deal by Sauron. He took the red pill and then he was, betrayed and etc, etc. I don't think Adar is any elf from the First Age we know, but I think what they are doing is they are very much drawing upon the character kind of archetype of Maiglin from the First Age, this idea of an elf who was captured, who was turned by Morgoth, who was promised something, a deal, and obviously the red pill, the idea of him being red-pilled immediately makes me think of Maiglin, who, is almost the perfect red-pilled candidate when it comes to, elves of the First Age. So no, I don't think Adar is some character from the Silmarillion. I just think they are taking aspects that would make, I know people have compared him to Maglor, I compare him to Maiglin, but I think those are just meant to be nods. He's not going to be a character from the Silmarillion, we all know.
Yeah, I think the only thing I have left to say on Adar, and it kind of goes to just these mixed back and forth feelings I have, and it's just that we've got quite a few clips of him now, and I understand that we're seeing them at this, like, they're in wartime now, they're preparing for war, but in none of these clips that I've seen of him so far have I felt that same kind of tenderness that Joseph Moore brought to the role. And again, we've only seen kind of clips of him in battle and talking to enemies and orcs and whatnot, but that's what I feel is missing at the moment. And in these really action-packed trailers, it's probably not something that they can show, but it's what I need to see, I think.
Okay. I just want to address a couple of comments because we've got a couple of people who are having to leave. Superfan K says, guys, I've got to go to get ready for work. I'll watch the rest of it later. Thank you so much for the stream. Keep doing what you do. You are loved and appreciated in the community. Well, Superfan K, that is incredibly kind of you, and thank you. And I hope work goes okay today, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. And Beric is also leaving us. And by the way, Beric is betraying us a little bit, I think. Beric says, all right, this was fun. Thank you both. I got to get going and talk about the trailer on the Torn Break now. Well, Beric, I am sorry that we're not good at it. No, I'm not even going to go through this, Joe. Of course, Barrett, you go lend your own valuable insights to Torn, and we'll catch up watching your own thoughts tomorrow, no doubt. But thank you so much for coming along and chatting with us, Beric. And obviously the rest of the VOD will be here for you tomorrow. I'll just say one quick thing on Adar to your points. I agree with you that we haven't seen that softness. One, I think, like you say, part of that is the way these trailers are focused. Two, I do actually think we're going to see a much harder side of Adar this season. He knows Sauron's back. He's on a war footing. That clip we saw from him from the featurette with Damrod of him, ordering them to release the troll into battle, even though it'll kill his own kind. It goes a lot back to his line to Galadriel saying, "I see I'm not the only elf transformed by darkness." And I think what we're going to see in Season 2 is that in his quest to defeat Sauron once more, Adar is going to let that darkness back in, and his empathy for his quote-unquote children is going to be slowly whittled away.
Yeah, I think as long as it's sort of this gradual descent, it will make more sense for me. But if we go straight into Season 1 and he's this sort of kind of harder, more battle-focused Adar, you're not gonna get me with that one. But we'll see. Only time will tell.
Exactly. So we carry on with the trailer. We get the shots of them overlooking. Adar saying, "I can help you destroy him." Then we see the Balrog. Can we just agree? We've been going for like 2.5 hours. I don't want to talk about the Balrog. Do you want to talk about the Balrog?
No, I never really want to talk about the Balrog.
I don't want to talk about the Balrog. He shouldn't be awake in the show. I don't like it. If they change our minds, great. But we've done this on like 3 episodes in a row. I don't want to talk about the Balrog. Go back to sleep and get out of my trailer. More of Galadriel fighting the forest. We see her saying, "I will not stop until this is put right." Now, this I think is telling, because I think this is Galadriel saying to either Elrond or Gil-galad that, listen, she knows she's messed up, but she's not that doesn't mean she's done. It just means that she's not going to stop her own quest until she atones for what she's done. And I kind of love that, because people were saying like, "Oh, Galadriel shouldn't have been deceived." But given they went this route, I love that it shows Galadriel's strength of spirit to not be defeated and want to go and fix this.
I also quite like that she's still, I think one of her biggest flaws in Season 1 as a character is that she was so focused on her mission that she was sort of blind to all the things around her. And while I think she will be kind of atoning for what she thinks she's done wrong in Season 1, she's not going to have completely changed as a person overnight. So I think that she will feel that same kind of passion and drive towards this new goal of kind of righting her wrongs from Season 1. And I think in that same vein, she's still going to make mistakes, and she's still going to be a bit blind to the things around her, because at her core, she is kind of mission oriented. She sometimes doesn't stop to think of the bigger picture. And I think we'll see that when she gets captured by Adar. As you said, she's not going to listen to Elrond. She's going to go kind of head first based on what she thinks is going to kind of make things right again.
Yeah, I think and one thing we've talked about in previous episodes, it's important that Galadriel doesn't just go from being kind of single-track minded to perfect healer of Middle-earth, listening to everyone. Like, it's important she still has those flaws we know about, even from the Silmarillion, of her being prideful, having this desire to rule, this desire to be the one in charge, in leading, making the decisions. And it's good that they're not just skipping straight from, "Oh, Galadriel was really troubled in the first season," to, "Oh, now she's fine, she's all calm, she's great, she's going to go stand in Lothlorien and stare at her mirror." Like, it's really great the way they are making this a gradual progression. And as Anne pointed out, this line is a great parallel with her saying to Halbrand about why, when Halbrand says, "Why do you keep fighting?" she says, "Because I cannot stop." And now it's not because she cannot stop, it's a choice. She's saying, "I must not stop until I atone for what I've done." Then we go forward, more of her killing orcs, which is great. One of my favourite shots, I tweeted this out with a couple of the other shots and just said, this is cinema. Is there anything damn cooler than a rider on a horse that's rearing, blowing a horn to sound I mean, my God, Alex Dissenhoff, which I assume this is one of Charlotte Brandstrom's episode, I'm going to message Alex and saying, was that you who chose that shot of the horse rearing? Because my God, that is like burned on my brain. So cool.
It's just as you said, like the cinematography is so consistently good that it's these kind of major actiony shots that really stop you in your tracks. But this is cinema, you're right.
It is. And so we carry on from that. We get Isildur fighting Shelob. Do we need to say much more about this? I mean, this has been in previous trailers. We know Isildur's going to be fighting Shelob.
No.
Great stuff.
Good luck.
But then as we get... Well, you know, we'll talk about this guy in a second, but let's talk about the dialogue that we get over this, because this is actually really important dialogue. So we get a voice, which I think is Sauron, saying, "Every soul in this seen or unseen world will know that it was you who's the architect of their demise." Now this, allow me a little more Celebrimbor raving. Here's why I love that so much. It's not just because he's continuing to manipulate Celebrimbor and say, "Oh, everyone's going to blame you for this. If you back out on me now, everyone is going to say that you were the one responsible for the demise of the elves. You were the one who made these rings that doomed all of us." It's him saying, every soul in the seen or unseen world. It's about the fact that all of Celebrimbor's family are dead, so their spirits are not in the seen world. They are probably, you know, we don't think that any of the Feanorians were reincarnated by this point. So all their spirits of his father, his uncles, his grandfather, they are all in the halls of Mandos. So this is Sauron manipulating him further, saying, not only will everyone who's alive think that you failed and think that you led to the destruction of Middle-earth, it's him saying, all your ancestors, all your family will see you as a failure. And as you said, that shot of him before Feanor's statue, he still doesn't want to be in his grandfather's shadow.
It's just as we said, kind of invoking his lineage as part of this deception. But this one seems quite aggressive. So I wonder if this is when Celebrimbor has started to push back and the kind of cracks in the deception have started to show through. You know, he's saying like, you don't really have a choice at this point. You know, you know who I am, but it's too late to go back. You've done it now. Exactly.
Like it is the same as his attempted deception of Galadriel, but the difference is Celebrimbor is going to be in a much more vulnerable position. So when he says to Celebrimbor, there's no going back, Celebrimbor really is going to feel that way. I just want to address some comments that were saying that this shot is Elrond. I don't think it is Elrond, and the main reason is because in the shots we see of Elrond from these riding and battle scenes, Elrond is wearing a cape, and you can see, if you've got this in HD in front of you, you probably won't be able to tell on stream, but you can see long hair coming out of the helmet. So this isn't Elrond. This is one of his, you know, soldiers blowing a horn. This might be a scout or whatever. Anyway, so we get every soul in the seen or unseen world, and then we get Ciarán Hinds' supposedly dark wizard. Oh, what do we say about Rune? And
I like his very long, straightened hair. I don't think that invokes images of another character we know very well from the Peter Jackson trilogy.
He's not Saruman, but they're being so annoying. Like, every time the showrunners are like, we don't want this to be a mystery box, blah, blah, blah. And then they're like, actually, let's put another character who looks also like Saruman. It's just like, stop doing this. Stop doing this, JD and Patrick. Stop doing it.
I mean, listen, we've been going for a while, so I'm not going to theorize about this, mainly because I don't have that many theories about who he is. All I'm going to say is I really like his character design. I love the kind of styled hair and then the kind of more unkempt beard. I like the colours, you know, the greys and the browns. I don't have much else to say apart, you know, Rune and the mystics and stuff. It's not what sticks out to me the most. It's not what I theorize about the most. So all I'm going to say is I think it looks great. I think he looks great.
Yeah, like, it looks very cool, and, like, I do like they're leaning into this idea that one of the few things Tolkien said was that in Rune we had these magical cults that may or may not have been started by the Blue Wizards. Oh, people are saying the stream froze.
Yeah. I don't know if we're back on or...
Are we back? I think the stream might be back. Oh, very good. Okay, I think we might be back, so let's look in the chat for signs that we're back. Give us a wave.
Yay!
Oh, we're back. Oh, guys, you don't know how stressful that was.
Listen, Harry, you just said there's no way it can be Saruman. It's absolutely not Saruman. And then the stream crashed. That's all I'm gonna
Saruman
say.
can go suck it. No, okay. Basically, guys, what Anna was saying is, like, looks very cool. Bit annoying about how they're doing the rune plot line, blah, blah, blah. I guess what I'll say on it is, like, I think it's very cool that they are leaning into this idea of magic cults, of maybe the Blue Wizards having been involved with it. I think maybe there's a chance... that maybe there is a chance that Kieran Hines, obviously this character we see in the previous frame, maybe he is a blue wizard, or maybe he's a human sorcerer who is playing at wizard. I think the fact he's got a staff is very telling. Obviously, one of the track titles in the soundtrack album is called The Staff, so is this going to be the one that the stranger, Gandalf, definitely not Gandalf, takes from him? Is this going to be why the stranger is heading east, because the two blue wizards are there? And here's my only theory I've got is, could this be one of the blue wizards who has started to fall towards the darkness, and the other blue wizard is going to be somewhere else resisting? Because that allows them to play into the idea that Tolkien never decided whether the two blue wizards stayed in the east fighting and resisting Sauron, or whether they fell to darkness. And so by having one of each, they could actually kind of play with both interpretations of Tolkien's writings.
I think that would work,
Anyway,
playing them off each other. And before we move on, I think everyone in the chat has turned slightly as delusional as we have, and I just want to shout out to the two very good puns we just got. Harry was very stressed when the stream went down, so Harry, well done to getting it back up. But Louis said, you ruined it. And I think that's probably one of the best puns I've ever heard. And then Joshua followed that up with, dark have been my streams of late. Which just...
Bravo.
I like that we all share the same delusion. And
I'm
Harry's
applauding you
cracking
with
open the wine now.
Yeah, listen, I've had like half a glass already. Sorry for those of you who didn't want the ASMR of me pouring the wine. But after the stream crashing and me nearly having a panic attack about it because I didn't know how to fix it, listen, I'll take it. Okay, let's move on because my voice is really suffering and we've still got like 50 seconds to go in the trailer. So... blah, 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 rune nonsense. Yes, I mean, mystics look cool, don't they? And I do like that this one's got snake imagery like Sauron has later. Yeah, cool. Pharazôn and the eagle, we've seen in previous trailers. Once again, for everyone, no, Pharazôn does not ride the eagle. He is facing it down. Do you know what? Because you guys have stuck with this stream for so long, I will share with you a little behind-the-scenes fact about this. When Pharazôn approaches the eagle, they filmed two different things he does when he approaches the eagle. So there are two different versions of this scene they filmed, and I'm not going to spoil it. Don't worry, guys, no spoilers here. But this is one of the cool things I learned from my leaks. They shot two different things that Pharazôn does when he approaches the eagle. So I still don't know which version they're going to use in the show. But yeah, anyway, we've seen the shot before. Very cool. Anything you want to add, Anna? Eagle's cool, Pharazôn bad.
I mean, that pretty much sums it up. I do like that they know how cool this shot is because we've seen the same shot but kind of from three different angles. And I like that they're just like, yeah, this one's a winner.
Because people are asking about my wine, it is a very cheap Chenin Blanc, South African. I got it for Sainsbury's for about £7, so... don't fool yourself into thinking I'm drinking the expensive stuff. I literally am spending all my money running this podcast, and I actually had to pay more to upgrade Riverside so that I could do these HD streams. So anyway, just more fun fact. Anna, actually, I do want to ask you about Pharazôn. I've noticed on Twitter that there has been a real change in opinion about Pharazôn. Yes, everyone still agrees he's going to be an evil villain, but a lot of people now really getting into the Pharazôn is very hot train. How are you feeling about this turn?
I understand it. I don't feel it. My thing was, and I've said this from the start, is that people are going to love to hate Pharazôn. Because the thing about Tristan, who plays Pharazôn, is that he's a very, very charismatic man. And I think that that's what people are saying. And I'm not saying that he's unattractive, because he's also a very attractive man. But in the way that I look at Gil-galad in armour and I'm like, oh my god, I screenshot it, I make GIFs of it. I stay on that scene for a bit longer than I should. That's not. I'm not like Farazan hot. Yay. But listen,
Yeah.
I get it. He looks powerful. He looks great in red, and he's sizing up to an Eagle of Manwë. So I get it.
Can I just say, the other thing I love about this, which we didn't touch on because we talked about the dialogue separately, is that as he says, we'll know that it was you who was the architect of their demise, we see Farazan, which for those of you who have read the Silmarillion and the Akalabeth, you know why Sauron's saying that, while Farazan on screen is so funny and clever. It's clever.
Chef's
It's very good
kiss.
editing. Chef's kiss. So we get this. We get the same shot we've seen before of Celebrimbor trying to destroy the Nine Rings. Then we get this shot, and Anna, I know I've got to turn it to you, because it appears to be... this is like Tom Bombadil and the Stranger in their rocking chair. Listen, I've got to be honest what I thought. I was like, these two are getting high AF. They are in Bombadil's house, like just lighting a spliff and just getting absolutely high as a kite, and then Bombadil or the Stranger's magic is making the fire flame out. But I genuinely saw this, and I was like... are these two just like getting high and singing with each other? Because like, am I opposed to that? I'm not. I don't know how to feel. How should I feel about this, Anna? Tell me how to feel about it.
Listen, the one thing I thought about this was, I was a bit worried about the unwhimsification of Tom Bombadil, but that is possibly one of the most whimsical looking rocking chairs I've ever seen in my life. And just the fact that he has kind of that chair in front of his fireplace, I'm happy with that. He's my whimsical little guy. He's right in front of me.
Yeah,
and
it's just...
I like the way that he's kind of accepting it. He's like kind of tilted towards the fire, and then you have the Stranger next to him who's just kind of like, oh my god, what's happening?
Now, on a serious note, I do think this is connected to the line from the last trailer where the Stranger says to Bombadil, is it my task to stop the fire? Is it my task to face Sauron? I think that might be connected to the scene of maybe, Bombadil's using the fire to make a metaphor. I don't know. Who knows why Tom Bombadil does the things he does? But listen,
maybe he
as
sings
I've
a song
admitted now...
about the secret fire.
Ooh, Anna, I like that. Is actually... oh, big brain Anna moment. Real big brain Anna moment. I have to admit, as much as I don't want Bombadil to be in the show and I'm still annoyed about it, I have to say the combination of Rory Kinnear, Bear McCreary making songs for him, and now just a couple of shots of him just looking completely unhinged from like putting his hat on like Indiana Jones to now being in a rocking chair like blowing the fire out of the fireplace. I'm just like, oh god, I'm going to get swept away in this, aren't I? I'm going to become so bomber-pilled that I'm not going to remember why I hated him, and it's going to break my heart.
You just ruined it by saying bomber pilled.
That's a Kylie thing, that's not a me thing. I didn't come up with that. Anyway, let's move on, because
Yeah, the last thing to say about that is Katie says, a blazing fire and a comfy chair and a pipe. Autumn cannot get here soon enough. It can't.
I like summer. I like the sunshine. Autumn can wait. Anyway, so we carry on. We see another shot of Elrond, as Anna would say, looking sexy, 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 hot sexy, in his armor and looking all bloody. Yeah, exactly. Anna gets it. Just repeat sexy ad infinitum. Then we get another shot of Elrond charging into battle we've seen before, and then this shot. As the kids say, this shot goes hard. I mean, Adar, like chest out, arms to his side, sword out, screaming in the black speech, kill them all. I mean, I know you want to see a softer side to him, but you've got to admit, this is a pretty great shot of Adar in battle.
Yeah, I mean, it's objectively good. I couldn't help but compare it to season 1, when he's kind of walking up towards the Elven Watchtower in the Southlands, with kind of his army of children behind him. The way I said that made it sound like he had an army of actual children behind him. The army of orcs that were with him, and the kind of Nampat is playing in the background, and he's so calm. He's walking in like without a care in the world. And then later on in the Southlands battle, he's again walking through the flames, completely calm. So I like to think that this rage that's built up is Sauron's effect on him. Like, that calmness, that kind of almost blasé-ness that he had towards it is gone, because he knows Sauron is back.
Yeah, I think what else it is you talked about earlier, those scenes of Gil-galad and Elrond standing there fighting in the light or the twilight of morning. That kind of looks like the same time as this. And I think the reason he's so angry is because he has bombarded Eregion with catapults. He has dammed a whole river. He has then attacked with siege weapons and ladders to try and take it. Elrond has then turned up and ruined it. They have then fought through the night. He has released the hill troll to end all hill trolls upon them, and Elrond and Gil-galad and their few soldiers are still fighting. And I think this is, as we've discussed before, this is the moment before the Yew catastrophe. This is the moment, like that shot from the previous trailer of Elrond looking defeated. This is where it's going to look like it's all over until the dwarves come to the rescue, if they go the same way as the books. But I just, as you say, I love the way this is just like Adar has just let the darkness in, and he is just so done with it all.
Yeah, and Matt in the comments kind of parallels it to Elrond screaming "Death to our foes," which another great moment in the last trailer. And I love that we're getting those kind of battle cries. It's just so good.
Yes. And this one being in black speech, for those of you who remember Sam's first interview about playing Adar, his first feature, he said that he asked the writers to put more black speech into his dialogue, which just, it makes me so even more excited for Sam's performance as Adar, but great to already see some of it here. So we get that, we get this orc. What is this orc doing? Flying through the air like, he thinks he's in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. It's just, it's very... I mean, do you have anything? I don't know what this orc is doing. He is just living his best life, but he is absolutely crazy.
No, I was about to give my theory, but the delusion set in. It makes no sense, and we don't have time for it.
Okay. You sure? You sure you don't want to...
I was about to say
you can lend your delusion.
I was about to say that he looks like he's seen an enemy who's very tasty, and he's like going at them with like a knife and fork.
It's dinner time. Meat.
It's
you know
dinner
what?
time.
To paraphrase, to paraphrase one of Peter Jackson's worst addition to the films, meat is indeed back on the menu, boys. Okay, so anyway, big combo move for this orc. Then we get more Elrond, and I think you can actually see Gil-galad in the background of this shot. I think under these arms here, that might be Gil-galad with his spear, although I can't really tell. Difficult to tell. More Elrond doing what he does best, which is being cool. More orcs blowing up. Then we get into this shot from the last trailer, and I think what's cool about this is because it starts as a wider shot. This was the shot where we heard him say to Celebrimbor, "You will give me the 9." And last time we were doing an episode, we were like, what's he got in his right hand? Whereas now I think we can safely say that is very clearly a sword. It's got the curved hilt of the Elfengard swords. So I think this is... Listen, for those of you who read the books, this is Celebrimbor's last stand moment, and I am pretty terrified thinking about it. So maybe, let's not say too much about that. R.I.P. Then we get Adar turning around, looking cool. Then we get now we get our next bit of dialogue, which is Prince Durin saying, "At this moment, the great tale of our age is being written." And I think this is just before, in the previous trailers where we get the speech where he's saying, fight with our friends. I think this is him walking out to give this speech, because one of the most interesting things I've noticed about the previous trailers and some of the promo clips we've had since is that he's not giving that speech from where the throne is. He's actually on the opposite side of the cavern. He's like on like a balcony on the opposite side of it. So this almost makes me think that his father is still alive by the time of the siege of Eregion, and he's not only going to defy his father, but he's going to rally his people with an inspiring speech to go and save Elrond and the other elves.
Yeah, I mean, there were so many good quotes in this trailer and all the trailers we've had so far, but this one is by far my favourite. I mean, at this moment, the great tale of our age is being written, and using that to rally your people to go and help your friend. Oh my god, it's so good.
Do you know what it is? It's a little bit Samwise Gamgee. It's a little bit, do you think we'll end up in the Great Tales? It's what will they say of us? And what I like as well, it's almost parallel paralleling Miriel's speech, where she says, what we have to make the choice of what we will be, will we be like our forefathers, our heroes, like that are carven in stone, or will we, kind of not rise to that? And so I think this is almost Doran's version of this, which I really like. Oh, Diomedia's leaving us. Diomedia, thank you so much for joining us for like 3 hours we've been going now. Don't worry at all about having to leave. You've always been you always leave such lovely comments after listening to podcasts, so thank you so much. The VOD will be up, should be as soon as we finish, so hope you have a great rest of your day, and hopefully we're only going to be doing this for another half an hour at most. At this moment, right, now we do actually have to talk about some more. Yeah. This is really curious to me. So I'll just play this scene through once. We get what looks like Valandil charging and rugby tackling Kemen to the ground. And then we get what looks like Kemen trying to drown Valandil. What the hell is... what is... I'm going to go back to that shot, but what is going on in this scene?
I mean, the first time that I watched it through, I thought that it was Kemen being drowned, and I was like, okay, I can get on board with this.
We can get behind
Let's
that.
Go. It's interesting. I mean, I feel like it's just a continuation, kind of showing us that the tensions are rising within Numenor. And, we know that Valandil has that connection to Elendil already. I don't think we know much about Valandil as a person enough to know whether he is on the side of the faithful or the king's men, but we do know that he was on the Sea Guard with Elendil. He was very excited to go and serve in Numenor, so I like the fact that he could be one of the people that's kind of going against the king's men, and in particular, the son of Pharazôn himself. And listen, it's vindication. Kemen just deserves to get beat up a little bit.
So we have to go to our resident Numenor and especially resident Valandil and Kemen expert as one of the few people that actually cares about Kemen. But listen, God bless you for it, Anne. There's no judgment here. So Anne says 2 things about this scene. 1, if Kemen wanted to drown Valandil, he would be gripping him differently. It actually looks like Kemen is holding Valandil up as he is slipping into the water. I don't know that I agree. I know what you're saying. Yeah, I was going to say, I know what you're saying about the hand position, but you can very clearly see when you play this clip forward frame by frame, Valandil's face is going down and Kemen's hand is on the top of his face that's being pushed into the water. Anne, I love you, God bless you, but I don't think Kemen is trying to pull him... Valandil just rugby tackled him. I know you love these two. Listen, I'm speaking to you. This is an intervention for you. He's not trying to pull him out of the water, and look at Valandil's cheek. His cheek is squished up like that because his face is being pushed down. He's trying to drown your boy Valandil. Look, his face ends up below the water. I mean, as for your second point, in the teaser we got on Monday, we see a shot of both Kemen and Valandil dripping wet, and Kemen's hair is dry. In this scene, so they both probably fall in, but neither... No, I'm getting to your second comment now, Anna. I'm getting to your second comment now. We've got a shot of both Kemen and Valandil dripping wet, and Kemen's hair is dry in this scene, so they both probably fall in, but neither of them drown. Listen, I agree with you that they might both go in the water, but I think that's probably because Valandil, pulls him in after him as Kemen's trying to drown him. But, I have to be... I mean, Anna, you tell me if you disagree, but, I am not seeing what other people are seeing in this scene. Listen,
if... I think people want to think that there are things about Kemen's character that there aren't. And I think if Kemen was an established enough character and he had an established enough relationship with Valandil to insinuate that he would save him from drowning, I would be on board with you completely, no pun intended. But it's Kemen, and he's trying to drown Valandil. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and
he might not even be trying to kill him. He might just be kind of trying to scare him. Whatever happens.
And Martin saying his fingers are gripped behind his head, which would be attempting to pull him out. I get what you're saying, that if your hand is behind someone's head, you could try and pull them out. But that's not what we see in the scene. What we see is Valandil's cheek squished from the pressure of a hand being pressed against it, and Valandil's face going below the wall. and you can say Kemen's not a killer, but he's really trying his best.
Yeah, you see, we don't know the context of this scene, but all I'm saying is, like, from the way it's shot, you could grab the back of someone's head to pull them out of the water, but you also could grab their hand to pull them out of the water, grab their arm, grab their shoulder. You don't grab the back of someone's head without the intention to dunk them into the water. Also,
it is so hard to pull someone's head out of, like, if
Unless
I was
he's
like
just
falling
got
in water,
him by the hair and he's like yanking him.
What is everyone in this chat saying? Everyone's agreeing with Anne. Like, you're all
I feel like we're
mental.
being gaslit.
What the hell are you talking about? Like, we're literally seeing a scene where Kemen is pushing Valandil's head under the water, and you're all going, nah, actually, if you look at the position of the fingers, I think you'll find that he's pulling him out.
Okay, we've got some sense. Katie, I get this point now, and I think if this is what the point was initially, is that he's kind of dunking him up and down to get information, that makes sense. But what I thought people were saying, that he's trying to save him and just completely get him out of the water. But I get it from the perspective. I think
that's what some of these people are saying, Anna.
That doesn't make sense to me. Katie, I'm on board with you if that's what you think. He's kind of trying to get information from him. But whatever happens is he's trying to get his face into that water intentionally. You know what? I did not think this was the shot we would be like stuck on for a while.
No. Guys, I will do a visual demonstration for you. If someone had their hand on the back of my head try to pull me up, it would look like that, and they would be trying to pull up. But the pressure is, his cheek is squished against his, like, orbital bone. It is pushing, like, that is where the force is going. It is physically impossible for him to be trying to pull Valandil up while pushing down on his face. I am begging you, listen, I know some of you like Kemen, and I know this might be the end of mine and Anne's friendship, but Anne, I am begging you here. He is pushing his head under the water. Like, you're Anatar. I'm Celebrimbor, and you're Anatar. You are gaslighting the hell out of me right now. You've just stop. We're gonna move on past this scene, because we tried to spend some time on the Numenor scene, and all we're getting is just gaslighting. Oh, I don't know how to deal with this. It's a lot.
Let's move swiftly on.
Yeah. Listen, the only other thing I'll say is about the scene that comes before we see him pushing his head underwater, because he is pushing him. Look, the royal guards are beating people up and fighting people. Kemen is the son of Pharazôn. Let's think... listen, stop messaging in the chat about that he's not pushing his face under. He is pushing his face under. I'm not having this conversation.
All I'm going to say is, listen, Anne, I do sympathise with you, because you are possibly the fan of the two nichest Rings of Power characters that have ever existed. So I understand the analysis of the 1 second scene, but I'm on team drowning.
Yeah. So the only other thing I'd say that, like, the clue is here of what's happening. The royal guards are continuing to beat people up and grab them and harass civilians, as we talked about in the earlier shot. Kemen is the son of Pharazôn, who, you know, when he makes his move power, is going to be in charge of these people. Kemen is clearly... Valandil is clearly fighting him. Anyway, we're just going to move on, because otherwise, like, Anne is going to, like, send out a hit squad on me, and we can't be having that.
You're going to get tackled like Kemen.
Exactly. Then we get this shot of Nori leaning over the stranger's body, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, don't have much to say. Oh, I know what I wanted to say about Stranger Things when Katie brought it up earlier. So do you know what I've been thinking about the Stranger is, you know, in season 1 of Stranger Things, when Eleven thinks she has that moment after she saves Mike when he's dropped off the quarry, where she says, "I'm the monster," and he says, "You're not the monster, you saved me." And I rewatched that scene recently, and I suddenly thought, that is the scene from season 1 where Nori says, "No, you're not Peril, you're good because you're here to help." And then it ends season 1 with him saying, "I'm good." And it's just suddenly dawned on me that the Stranger is basically 11 from Stranger Things. Like, he doesn't control his powers at the start of season 1. He doesn't really know anything about himself. He can't speak properly. By the end of season 1, he can speak, he can control his powers, and he knows who he is. So, anyway.
I'm not gonna lie, when you kind of went into that, I thought you were gonna make a really bad joke about the Stranger Things. I was just kind of preparing myself for it.
I mean, if only I was that clever to have that joke. Right, let's continue, because we've just got to get to the end of this trailer now. We're struggling so bad. So then we get the shot. I mean, is this the coolest shot of the trailer? I mean, it's either this or the one of the horse rearing, but this fisheye lens, this wide shot, I mean, maybe the coolest shot in any Lord of the Rings adaptation I've ever seen. I know that is a big claim with the trilogy existing, but one of the coolest shots I've ever seen.
I think you might be a horse girl, Harry.
I might be a horse girl. I tell you what, the problem is I watched Yellowstone, which is this really kind of melodramatic American TV show with Kevin Costner, which is about cowboys, and everyone gets murdered every episode, and it's kind of ridiculous. But it's nice because you get these beautiful shots of the Montana wilderness and lots of shots of horses, and I think it's turned me into a horse girl. So anyway, brief interlude. We get a shot of Theo and Estrid and the Ents, which we've seen before. We see Eregion under siege. We see Damrod. Oh, Anna, we've got to pause for Damrod.
We have to?
Your big boy.
Look at him. Like, look at that scale, though, him compared to, like, the torches that are being held in the air. Like, that's insane. But just this succession of shots is really funny to me, because I know that it's going to play out differently in the show, but it's just him looking up. Arondir, like, makes eye contact with him, and then you just see Arondir jumping on top of him, and just the shots of them looking at each other. I don't know if anyone watching this has watched It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, but that really kind of famous scene where Charlie and Mac are, like, they kind of meet each other's eyes across the restaurant, and they just kind of have tunnel vision and they can't stop looking at each other. That's what the shots of Damrod and Arondir really just made me think of. I'm so sorry.
I was gonna go with Zoolander, you know, the Ben Stiller animals, you know, where they lock eyes. Oh, that's so good. Such good analysis. Yeah, then we see Arondir looking down, and then we see him, like, is this Arondir trying to outdo Legolas? I mean, look at Damrod. He's covered, if you look at Damrod here, he's covered in stab wounds, he's all slashed up, he's covered in arrows, and Arondir decides to go for the, hang on, let me go back a couple of frames. Oh, are we still here? Yeah, we're still here. Arondir decides to go for the Hail Mary of just diving onto his head. So God knows what he's got planned.
Yeah, I mean, very reminiscent of that season 1 shot we got that ended up being in episode 3, I think. But it was one of those kind of money shots from the trailers of Arondir kind of jumping up. I think there was like an axe or something in his hand. So good. But all I'm going to say about this scene is that the 3 things we now know are Bear McCreary has released the last Ballad of Damrod, which is just like, I don't think I can describe how insane it is. Like, it's just amazing. We know that, or at least kind of an instrumental version, is going to be playing as Damrod sadly dies. We know that Gil-galad is going to be fighting him at some point, and now we know that Arondir is going to be fighting him. And if all those 3 things are mixed together, that has the potential of being one of the best scenes in a Tolkien adaptation ever put to screen. Yeah.
I mean, I am kind of interested in how Arondir gets to Eregion and why he's there, and I wonder whether that's tied into the It is, isn't it? It's like, is it connected to Galadriel and Adar? Like, what is going on? Like, and I honestly don't have a. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there was never like a theory about it, and then we just got that picture of Gil-galad and Arondir like behind the scenes, and we were like, okay, I guess he's here now. It's the beauty of original characters, isn't it? I guess.
Yeah, they can be anywhere, do anything. I mean, like, I'm sorry, guys, we're like 3 and a bit hours into this analysis, and I don't have any theories. But this isn't like a case of I'm tired. This is just like, I don't know what Arondir is doing in Eregion. Maybe it's something to do with what the Ents tell him. Maybe it's to do with him seeing the orcs leave Mordor, because obviously if they're going to Pelagir, they might see the orcs on the move. He goes to try and warn Eregion. I mean, he must get there before the army, so yeah. Someone's asking, is it the quality of the stream or the video that needs to be high? It's on max quality. I think it's just because of the stream, and it's a dark shot. I think it'll be fine. Anyway, yeah, Arondir is in Eregion. He's doing Legolas things. I saw Katie say that that someone was worried about Arondir. I don't think Arondir's dying. If Arondir dies, it's going to be like season 5. He's going to get like a heroic Battle of the Last Lions moment. He's safe. Trust.
He's definitely safe. And something that's just really made me laugh is Forest Floor has just joined the stream. So, hello. And they said, "Oh my god, I managed to join in. You're still going." We are still going somehow.
Where's that? I don't even see that comment. I think. Oh yeah, I see it now. Yeah. Hi, Forest Floor. Listen, I don't know. Listen, we're delirious at this point. But you know when people are like, "Oh, how did you record a 4-hour episode podcast?" That's because it's usually a 5-hour recording session where me and Anna lose our minds. Like, this is short for us. This is still technically us, like, under time. So
it is. Yeah. And one thing you should notice that everyone who's been watching it with us for this whole time has also gone slightly delirious, and we appreciate the kind of mass hysteria that this has caused.
I appreciate that we still have 50 concurrent viewers. How are there 50 people still here? Like, yeah, this is my content for a Wednesday night.
But we appreciate you all. I mean, I feel like where else are you going to find 2 people who'll analyse frame by frame of a trailer for this long? No.
Oh, Forest Floor, you've just said you're the one who binged all the podcasts in the way. Sorry, I've forgotten your Twitter username, but yes, me and Anna have been like, who is this person who has been binging all our episodes in 1 week? It has literally blown our minds, your ability to get through like 40 episodes. So,
like, the feedback has been so lovely to see, because I think the thing that shocked me was I sometimes forget that all of our old episodes exist, and I was like, oh gosh, people actually go back and listen to those. But yeah, we really appreciate it.
We do just need to briefly answer Anne's question about Arondir. Okay, but where is Isildur, Estrid, and Theo at this point? Did Arondir leave them to go join the war, or has Isildur and Estrid left for Númenor at this point, and Theo is just on his own? Anne, your guess is as good as mine. I think Isildur and Estrid may have left for Númenor by the end of season 2, would be my guess. I think Theo being isolated is going to be a big part of his story this season, and probably clues into where his story's going. And I think following his what we expect to be Bronwyn's departure at the start of this season, I think if Arondir then leaves to go and warn Eregion and to fight for Eregion, Theo being isolated and left alone in Plagia, I think it's going to be setting up some really interesting things for season 3, when we'll be seeing Sauron distributing the 9 rings for men. So that's my theory on that, I guess. But then we get onto this really interesting piece of dialogue from Sauron, where he says to Celebrimbor, "You think it was only you who put yourself in my power." And we get the same shot of him from the previous trailers of him with the Elven Guards. So Anna, I guess what we're seeing here is that not only has he been manipulating and taking control of Celebrimbor, but his influence has spread throughout the citizens of Eregion, clearly.
I mean, yeah, I think it's just this is the culmination, isn't it? And he's shed the Halbrand and shed the Anatar form, I think, when he says this. And it's almost like he's saying it as if, like, you should have figured this out by now. Like, you know, I thought you'd kind of pieced this all together. And I think you theorized originally when we got that shot of him kind of with all the swords around him. I still don't know if we know fully how it's going to play out, but you did think that he kind of mind controlled the gods somehow to kind of turn on each other instead.
Yeah, I think that's probably what we're saying.
He's got everyone under his spell.
And obviously, as we saw it earlier in this trailer, where all the other guards are dead on the floor, and then the one goes for him and he does Galadriel's signature move. So clearly this is like Celebrimbor thinking he's got Sauron cornered, and then Sauron just turns the tables on him, and that's when Celebrimbor ends up desperate and alone. Forest Floor also asks, on Arondir, what if he dies in the end trying to protect Theo at the Last Alliance, assuming Theo isn't a wraith or otherwise compromised by then? I think the answer is less about trying to protect Theo. I think the answer is more about, if you read in the texts, what the Sylvan Elves and and Orifer and the other elves of the Green would do at the Last Alliance. Not the greatest military strategists, and I think it. I mean, hopefully they'll find a way to make it emotionally satisfying, but I think that's probably where Arondir's journey is ending. But
I mean, he's making those bonds, you know, as we said, he's an original character, but a lot of his story in season 1 was centered around other original characters, you know, Bronwyn, Theo. So if they're kind of putting him in Eregion with Elrond and Gil-galad, they're tying him into those storylines then as well, I guess.
Exactly. So we get that shot of Sauron, and then we get our final little section, which is we see the beautiful crown of Sauron that we've seen from the prologue, and we see him wearing armor over his black robes with snake-like imagery. He picks up the crown. We see him dueling Galadriel with both his crown and a sword, which is, very cool of him to be dual-wielding, not two swords, but a crown and a sword. And one of the most interesting things you can see in, let's see if I can get the shot, here is this shot of his breastplate, which shows snake imagery, but as I tweeted about earlier, this is not just snake imagery, this is imagery of the Ouroboros, the snake which is eating its own tail, a symbol of eternity and immortality. So I love that clearly this is after Eregion has fallen, and this is Sauron ascendant. Anatar is no more. I remember someone saying earlier, at what point does Anatar become Sauron? I don't know at what point, but at this point, he is 100% Sauron, because he is donning the imagery of what Sauron wants to be, this eternal ruler of Middle-earth, of Morgoth's successor. And as the shot carries on, we see him dueling Galadriel, and then he says, Galadriel. And Galadriel's having a rough time fighting him. Anna, this is our last shot of the trailer. What are your thoughts on it?
I mean, the first thing I wanted to say is that I think from Galadriel's perspective, the last time she sees Sauron, he is in his Halbrand form. And if granted, this is the first time she sees him since then, and he rocks up looking exactly like her. I'm sorry, but when you see them next to each other in that shot, it's so funny. The hairstyle's the exact same. And I just love that that's the image he adopted for Celebrimbor. Anyway, the most interesting thing about this to me, apart from the fact that they're together again, because I really do wonder how that comes about, is the storytelling happening here. They've both got swords to each other's throats, and Sauron's crown is balanced directly in the middle of them. It's very, very interesting storytelling there.
Yeah, I think... What do I think about this scene? So
you've gone grasping your head again.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I was grasping my face a minute ago because I'm losing my mind. I'm having it's the Gollum moment, isn't it? Not listening. That's you are the Gollum to my Smeagol. Anyway, let's get back on track. But listen, you are Gollum, so it's tough luck. Abjeet Borkar just said, just catching up on the live stream. Are they already on the third hour? Listen, we're trying to finish it up now. We're delirious. We're losing our minds. We're talking about which one of us is Smeagol, which one of us is Gollum. I just downed the rest of my second...
I actually have Gollum behind me. Right over there, if anyone can see him.
Do you want to go and get your Gollum plushie while we're talking? No, it's fine. It's fine. You don't have to. Okay, you go get Gollum. Oh, sorry guys, I'm absolutely losing it. Anyway,
he's like my Eye of Sauron. He just watches over me at all times. Yeah.
Anyway, I'll try and get back to the point of the scene. As you said, Sauron's crown is poised in the middle, and it's almost like that thing we saw in season 1. Whereas before, Sauron was trying to tempt her with joint rulership, with joining him. Now it's like they are as is written in the text, Galadriel is Sauron's chief opponent, and they are balancing Sauron's rule of Middle-earth between them, and that's what they're fighting over. So even though they have swords over the necks, the thing at stake is whether Sauron's dominion, his metaphorical crown, is going to reign over Middle-earth. I do have a couple of questions. Why are Sauron and Galadriel alone together on some hilltop after the siege of Eregion? Why is the crown there? Has Adar been hanging on to it for all these centuries since he stabbed Sauron with it? Did he bring it with him to the siege? I have more questions than answers about this scene.
Listen, one of my kind of crack theories, and this isn't kind of a spoiler for anyone because it's something just crazy that I made up, was that Adar dies at the end of this season, and that it's a parallel to how he kills Sauron, and Sauron kills him with the crown. So that would be my way of kind of explaining why he has it. don't know why Adar still has it, but that's the thing to me. When I first saw them, together, I was like, okay, how has this happened? Has he kidnapped her, taken her somewhere? Have they just stumbled across each other? I mean, I guess it could be kind of a little nod back to the raft. We still don't know how he ended up there, and it's kind of like that thing he said to her, the tides of fate are turning or something like that. But it's a very interesting thing to end with.
So we've got a variety of opinions in the chat. Susie says, I fear this might be the Last Temptation score scene. I actually disagree. I think Last Temptation has to be Celebrimbor, but that's just because I don't really care for more tempting of Galadriel. I think we've done enough tempting. But you could very much be right. Halbrand's Pouch says, is this a vision or real? I tend to think it's real and followed right after the cage scene. Lavendar says the crown was in his pouch all along. Guys, if you want a little behind the scenes fact, there was nothing in the pouch. We're not gonna find out. Like the point of the pouch was the symbol on it, which was the sigil of the Southlands. There's nothing in the pouch. We're not going to get some big reveal about the pouch. Halbrand's Anne says, pretty sure this is a Vision Mind Palace fight scene. Listen, I'll just say, I don't think this is a Vision Mind Palace fight scene. A, because the sky looks orange, like there's been flames and smoke burning in the background. I think this is literally after Eregion has fallen, and Galadriel, follows Sauron out of Eregion and tries to corner him and defeat, as she says earlier in the trailer, she's not going to rest until he's defeated. Oh, Anna, you've got a theory. Sorry,
a theory just formed in my head as you were speaking. Okay, so my new theory is that, and this goes on from my orc who builds Galadriel's cage during season 2, is that because he's just an apprentice orc, he didn't build a very good way to get her out of the cage. So during the battle, they forget that Galadriel is still in the cage and they leave her behind. And who comes and stumbles upon her after Eregion has fallen? It's Sauron. And he gets her out of the cage. Theory formed.
Think for 2 episodes, Galadriel, who is like one of the lead stars of the show, is going to spend 2 episodes sitting in a cage?
Yes, that's my theory.
Well, I think we have reached peak theory at this point. Just going through our last few comments. Halbrand's Pouch says, maybe Sauron is still obsessed with crowns here, but after this scene he'll be like, oh, I'll make another ring to rule them all. Could be. Susie says, and I do think this is happening in reality, but a vision could be interesting. Katie says, Adar is sentimental. I wonder if he held on to it to remind him of the flashback scene we're getting. Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's a good chance of that. Martin says that crown could be forged by Sauron, so it could harm him. I've never really agreed with this interpretation of needing a special object to hurt Maiar or Valar, because we see in the Silmarillion you can just harm or kill them with normal weapons. So I get what you're saying, Martin, but I've never subscribed to this theory, because Glorfindel and the Balrog, Fingolfin and Morgoth, there are repeated examples of Maiar and Valar being harmed by just regular weapons. Louis says, does Sauron using Defile Celebrimbor's forge in Eregion to reforge his crown? That would be really cool, but this does look identical to the crown we've seen in the prologue scenes. So if he does reforge it, my god, he's got a photographic memory for what the crown should look like, so good for him.
Listen,
Katie
the
says...
one thing I want to touch on... Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
I just interrupted you.
Go.
But is, without kind of getting into too many spoilers, I mean, I assume everyone who's still here knows what's happened, but Forest Floor's comment about what if she followed him and the look on her face is in reference to what happens to Celebrimbor. There's a really interesting behind the scenes shot that we got where she's looking up at something and she's in the same outfit that she's wearing here. So I'm not gonna go into it too much, because I feel like that might be entering spoiler territory, but very good point.
No, Galadriel, despite Anna's very stupid theory, Galadriel does make it into Eregion, because we do see in the behind the scenes video that Galadriel is in Eregion at night time. Flames are burning and she's looking up at something. So yes, as Forest Floor says, in terms of what happens to Celebrimbor, that could be what she's looking at. last few comments before we finish up. Halbrand's Pouch says, okay, Harry, now I'm in an existential crisis. Halbrand's Pouch, I have been in an existential crisis for 3.5 hours now, so try being me. Claudia says, to be honest, I've just been settling in for the ride. I'm now used to you now, so under 3 hours would be weird. Listen, I think we're at like 3 hours 20 at this point, so we've at least done that. Josh says, it's been great all, just 14 more days to go. Anne says, Harry looks like he's lost the will to live. I haven't lost the will to live. You guys just never see me record a podcast where we're going for like 4 hours and I'm losing my voice. And I usually don't have wine to help me, so this is a different. Louis says, a very helpful talking dog frees her from the cage. more Silmarillion throws back. And Susie says, this could be Galadriel's quote-unquote suicide, referring to it as such because I think she might be sacrificing herself at some point, and I won't explain that because I'm delirious, mission or wrong. No, Susie, I think you make a good point that if you contrast that line earlier in the trailer where she basically says, I won't stop until, I've basically I'm going to have to pull that line up again to see exactly what she says. I will not stop until this is put right. I think you're right. I think Galadriel is, like, after Eregion falls, she's going after Sauron alone because she just thinks, Eregion's fallen, everything we have just tried to save is lost, and this is my one chance. I've got to go and try and kill him. Now, how this scene ends, none of us know, but I would be shocked if this isn't one of the last scenes of Season 1. Anna, any last thoughts on this final scene before we wrap up?
Not really. I think we've kind of discussed everything there is to discuss. I think after having a trailer that's very heavily focused on Anatar and Celebrimbor, it's interesting decision to end it on a shot of him and Galadriel instead. I don't know what I take from that, but I do find it quite interesting. And yeah, I think we have reached the point of peak delusion, but we made it through the trailer.
Yeah. Do you know what I think? Here's what I think it is. I think they know that Galadriel and Sauron are their two most marketable assets. So yeah, of course you end the trailer with these two. Like, and that's not me like having a go at them. Like, that is just smart marketing. Like, my job before the pandemic was working in marketing. Like, this is what you do. You take the most marketable asset and you put it front and center. So like, I'm not blaming them. I'm just saying, like, this is the smart marketing strategy.
Especially him saying her name. I mean, I feel like all I've seen this afternoon on Twitter is just that screen grab of him with the Galadriel subtitle over the top.
Yeah.
So listen, it did the job.
Yeah, shout out to the Haladriels who are getting, one crumb from this season at least. So, fair play to you guys. I'm not really a big shipper myself, but I appreciate anyone who's on that grind. But yes, we have reached the end of the trailer. We have been going for about 3 hours and 30 minutes.
Which is good for us.
Where's that gone? Okay. Honestly, this is not going to be our longest episode. And I know that it took us like 40 minutes to get to like 15 seconds in the trailer. But listen, we really picked up the pace because we were like, who cares about the Balrog? Who cares about Rune? That was our approach.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if anyone else has any kind of final thoughts, favourite things from the trailer. I mean, listen, all in all, I'm happy we got Gil-galad fighting. I'm happy we got Gil-galad in a different outfit. I'm happy we got Gil-galad with Aeglos. And we got Círdan talking, so you guys, what a great final trailer. And just how insanely excited is everyone, and how exciting is it that we're this close to season 2 just finally landing.
Yeah, exactly. We're 2 weeks away from season 2. And I agree. Listen, I haven't said it enough actually. This trailer was phenomenal. Like, I think the San Diego Comic-Con trailer is still my favorite just because it was so much. It was so, and like, we hadn't seen, like, this trailer only works because of the San Diego Comic-Con trailer, but like, in terms of emotionally harrowing, this is the most emotionally harrowing trailer they've ever done. I'm still not over what's happening to Celebrimbor. I won't be for the next 2 months while we go through this show, so don't expect me to be okay anytime soon. But yeah, just what a phenomenal trailer, honestly. And I should say, thank you to everyone, I mean, we still have, what is it now? We still have 51 concurrent viewers, and we've been going for over 3.5 hours. So just like my hands up in, absolute thanks to you. Thank you so much.
And I'm just reading through, a lot of people are saying that the first live stream went very well. So Harry, I know that you're going to go off and think about the slight technical difficulties that we had, but be proud of yourself because you did your first live stream and it went very well.
Yeah, no, I mean, guys, I do apologize for it breaking in the middle of that. I think the way YouTube works is that when we end this, the VOD should all be in one part, and it will just, stitch together the part where it cut out. If not, I'll just link the second VOD with the first. I don't know how it works, but hopefully that's how it works. What I'll try and do tomorrow is I will take the audio tracks from, because we're recording this locally on Riverside FM, which is what we use to record these interviews, these podcasts. I'll take the audio files, I'll add an intro and outro like I do for all my podcasts, and make an audio version, so if people just want the podcast version, they can have that. It won't be edited like normal, where I cut out all the umming and the ahhing and the and like and the tangents and everything else, so it will just be raw. But for those of you who don't want to, who've missed the stream and don't want to watch the video but want it in a podcast, I'll do that. This is obviously the first live stream we've done. We'll definitely do more in the future, mainly because I've paid Riverside to be able to do these HD live streams, so I'm gonna have to do them in future.
No, listen, I like this. I think the being on camera for the first time was quite nerve-wracking, but I realised that everyone who actually comes to watch us are very nice, kind, lovely people. So, what's to fear?
And it's actually fine for me, because Aru said at the start, Anna's just there, not only having brilliant insights, but being beautiful and gorgeous and everything that Anna is. So I just get to be here as the gremlin in the corner. So there's actually very little pressure on me. Anna looks great, and I'm just here with my books in my cave. Don't say it. I get the feeling you want to say something. Just let me do it.
Harry, don't do that to yourself.
It's all right. It's fine.
You're the looks. You're the looks and the brains. I'm the theorizer. I come up with very good theories.
You're not the comedy of this show, I can tell you that. Anyway, but no, a massive thank you to everyone who tuned in. Like I said, we will do some more of these in the future. I will also hopefully be launching a Patreon this week to support the Daily Rings of Power podcast. I've talked about this a little bit on Twitter, but I've been doing this for 2 years. For those of you who don't know, it costs quite a bit to host the podcast and distribute it, just for the memory. Then I pay for Riverside FM, which I use for recording these interviews, and then there's things like the live stream upgrade. So yeah, I am gonna launch Patreon soon. There'll be bonus episodes. You'll have access to all the scripts that I write for this. For example, my last soundtrack episode is a 6,400 word script, so you'll have access to 41 scripts or something like that. But there is no pressure for anyone to become a patron when I do launch it. It's only if you have some spare cash and you want to support the podcast. I'm not trying to make any money out of this. It's just to support the podcast. But yeah, I'll hopefully launch that by the end of this week. But even if you don't want to do that, just listen, thank you to anyone who's ever listened to one podcast episode, tuned into 1 minute of a live stream or one of our Twitter spaces. I appreciate you so much. And you guys are leaving such lovely comments in the chat. I can't read them all, but listen, just such love to all of you. Like I said, we still have 50 viewers after 3.5 hours. Anna, closing thoughts from you, and where can people find you on Twitter?
Closing thoughts are just, I think I say this every time, and not to get really sentimental, but I think making my Twitter account was one of the best things I've ever done, because having this space to just come and talk to so many lovely people about something that we're all so excited for, coming up with theories, just making jokes, talking about our favourite scenes. It's just I wouldn't trade it for the world. There's a reason that we sit here for hours and hours on end and do it. And as Harry said, I don't think we can ever kind of get across how much we appreciate all of you for being here. And it's almost sort of bittersweet, because in a few weeks this will all be in the past and we'll have seen season 2. But the build up to these seasons and watching and experiencing them coming out with everyone is just an unparalleled experience. So thank you everyone for being here, and Thank you, Harry, for hosting it as you always do. You did it very well with only one hiccup.
Thank you, and thank you for mentioning the hiccup. I appreciate it. As much as you told me not to worry about it, you keep bringing it up, which is very cool of you. But no, you are of course more than welcome. I'll just echo what Anna said. I made my Twitter account 2 years ago just because I wanted to talk to fellow Rings of Powers fans and never had a plan of starting a podcast or any of this stuff. It's all just kind of snowballed, but what a wonderful journey it's been, and I'm so glad to be active again, doing a podcast every week, now doing these live streams. I don't think when we do our breakdowns of every episode, we probably won't do them as live streams, because in order for them to be high quality and like actually be able to edit them down something useful, we might need to do them off, not live, but as we did them last season. But we will try and do a couple of live streams during the season, whether that's like a halfway through the season we'll do a live stream, one at the end of the season. We'll try and do some live streams as well, but just no promises that all 6 of our episode breakdowns are going to be done live. They'll probably be recorded offline so me and Anna can have more time to prepare. But yeah, once again, thank you so much to everyone that's tuned in tonight. If you're not already following Anna, follow her at myLSR. If you're not following me, what are you doing here? If you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, please do. If you're not subscribed to the podcast,
I'm going to do that right now.
Yeah, God, you are the worst co-host. But yeah, massive thank you to Anna. Anna has probably spent days worth of time with me over the last 2 years recording this podcast. I'm indebted to Anna as much as I am to all of you listeners. I'm clearly a bit delirious after nearly 4 hours talking. But thank you. I really do appreciate you all so much. 2 weeks to go. Last thing, next Monday, Tuesday, I'll have an episode deep diving on the Siege of Eregion with Sarah Westvik. Then I'll be doing an episode reacting once the soundtrack album releases on the 23rd, so you can expect that on the weekend of the 24th, 25th. And then the show releases on the 28th, 29th, so depending on if anything comes out, hopefully no more episodes before then, but then we'll get into our episodes for the season. But yeah, listen guys, thank you so much for joining us. I hope this was a good time for all of you. I do really appreciate you all so much, and hope you have a great rest of your morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. And as we always say on the podcast, Namare. So Namare everyone, thank you so much. Goodbye. And that, dear listeners, is the end of the recording from my live stream with Anna. I hope that for those who preferred to wait for this audio version, that it was still as interesting and engaging as it was for us during the live show. Whilst our discussion was perhaps a little less methodical and formulaic than usual, I hope the general descent into insanity and the associated comedy of that was a welcome change of pace. Like I said at the start of the show, I will definitely try to do more of these live streams in future. So let me know if you'd like me to keep uploading the audio versions to the podcast feed, or if you'd prefer these slightly rougher cuts remained on YouTube. Now, the pace of podcasts is probably going to increase exponentially at this point. I'll be speaking to Sarah Westvik later today as we do a deep dive on the Siege of Eregion. Next week we have both the world premiere for the Rings of Power, and we'll have the release of the soundtrack album. So, with that in mind, make sure you subscribe to the podcast on whichever platform you prefer, so that you don't miss a single one of these episodes. And as this episode originally came from a live stream on YouTube, I'd greatly appreciate it if you could head on over to Daily Rings of Power on YouTube and hit subscribe. And make sure you turn notifications on. That way, if you do want to come along to future live streams, you'll be notified the second we go live. As always, I'd love to continue the conversation on Twitter or in the comments on YouTube, so let us know what your thoughts are on the final trailer. Have you already reached peak excitement, or is each day leading up to the season airing still an agonizing wait for you? But for today, that's all we have time for. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back very soon with another episode of the Daily Rings of Power podcast. Namarie.